people you choose. And blessed is the nation that, Lord, whose God is the Lord, the Almighty. I pray, dear Lord, for this particular council, that, Lord, you may choose each particular one here as your own people and choose this borough as your borough, that we may experience your blessing upon every decision they make for the glory of your divine name. And above all, dear Lord, as they continue with their deliberations this evening, it is written that what has the Lord your God required of you, O man and woman, but that you do justly, that you love mercy, and you walk humbly with your God. So I pray for each one of our beloved leaders as they sit in this council. May they do justly by your help. May they love mercy, O God, in every decision and every action that they take. And may they walk humbly with their God in every decision they make and in every way they handle the residents of this particular borough. They will be a blessing. There will be servants that are sent of God to be a blessing unto the whole borough, and you'll be glorified. And the Lord, as they finalize the meeting, finally, oh dear Lord, I command your blessing upon them. That Father, King of glory, dear Lord God, your favor shall be upon them. And Lord, you bless their path. You bless the work of their hands. They are businessmen likewise. Bless their businesses. That, Lord, as they prosper, the council will prosper likewise for the glory of your name. And so as I leave, dear Lord, I command as per your command. I place your name upon this council. I place your name upon the mayor, I place your name upon the deputy, and I place your name upon all the officials, dear Lord, in this place and upon this borough. That may the Lord bless all of you. May the Lord keep you. May the Lord cause his face to shine upon you and this council and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon each one of you and your families, and may he establish you in his peace and in his favor. In Jesus' name, amen. God bless you all. Amen.
Thank you. Today's meeting will be broadcast live and recording retains on the council YouTube site. Therefore, I will presume everyone consent to this happening. If you do not consent to this, then you should leave the meeting. There are a number of councillors who will be joining us remotely tonight via Zoom. These members will be not counting as a formally being in attendance at the meeting for the purpose of the Section 85 of the Local Government Act 1972. However, their virtual attendance will be recorded in the minutes under item 1. The member in attendance virtually will be able to speak at the meeting but won't be able to take part in the vote. Next is, are there any apologies for the absence?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I've received apologies for absence from Councillors Basutil and Padda.
Any more apologies? No? Can the clerks read out the names of those members who are in attendance virtually, please?
Yeah, I've got Councillors Summers, Kim Nagpal, Hamidi, Jay Anand and Mohammed all present virtually on Zoom.
Madam Mayor, can I give Councillor Haley's apologies, please? Thank you.
Okay. Are there any declaration of pecuniary interest? Huh? Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Madam Mayor. Apologies from Councillor Sahota as well, Cam Sahota, who is on maternity leave.
Councillor Sahota. Any? Are there any declaration of pecuniary interest? Are the minutes of the meeting held in 26th of July 2022 agreed as a correct record of proceedings? Are the minutes of the meeting held on 20th September 2022 agreed as a correct recording of proceedings? Thank you. Mayor's announcements. Before I begin, I wanted to welcome the Cub Scouts to their meetings who are sitting up the public gallery. They are here to see democracy in action, so you all should be on your best behavior. Well done. Belated happy Diwali. 24th October was Diwali. I do hope some of you are able to mark this important day. I attended various Diwali events across the borough, including Diwali celebration at Barclay Bank in Southall and House of Parliament. We also celebrated Hindu Vikram New Year's again. I hope that you were able to mark this special day. October was Black History Month. There were many events taking place throughout the community. It was lovely to see so many of you at the unveiling of the plaques of Windrush Assessment ceremony held in the Walpole Park. There were many impassioned speakers there, beautiful poetry, singing and music. I thoroughly enjoyed the day and feel honored to have been invited. Remembering Sunday is approaching. I hope that councillors will join the local remembering ceremonies across the borough. If you have not done so already, please do let the mayor's office know which ceremony you will be attending. With Remembering Sunday in mind, Black History Month, I feel it is a good time to reflect on the sacrifice of Lance Sergeant Dale McCollum, who is buried in Greenford Cemetery. He gave his life in service to the country in Afghanistan. 12 years ago, he was born in Jamaica and served in the army for 12 years, with tours of duty in Kosovo, Iraq, before being deployed in Afghanistan. We should also reflect on the sacrifice during this time of the year. Thank you to all you who attended my Jazz and Curry fundraising night at the Spice Village in Southall. It truly was a very enjoyable evening, and together we raised, guess how much money I raised? 3,000 charity in a one night. Thank you so much, all helping me a lot. This money go to for the people who are suffering. So I choose the heart link. You have all now received the save and the date mark upcoming fundraising events. Please reserve your tickets early. I hope you will all support me in raising funds for my chosen charity. Heartling Ealing Hospital, sport group which does a lot of good work for the local community. I recently opened the cath lab at Ealing Hospital. Ealing residents will now be able to be seen much faster, as they will no longer have to travel to Northwick Park Hospital. This is a great achievement. For the ladies, please keep an eye out, as I'm looking to arrange a fundraising ladies' night only, not for men. Finally, I would like to congratulate Councillor Kamal Deep Sahota on the birth of her son on 17th October. Congratulations, congratulations. Item number 6, petition from the member of the public. There are any petition from the member of the public tonight? No. Petition from the member of the council? Question for the member of the public. Can you call her, please? Here. Her name is Helen Chan to enter the chamber and sit next to the deputy mayor and ask her question, please.
Thank you. My name is Helen. I'm from Hong Kong, and I'm representing the Ealing and Northviews Hong Kong Club. And tonight I have a question for the council. According to the latest statistics, show that there have been 140,500 applications since the BNO visa routes introductions up to June 2022. It is estimated more than 35,000 Hong Kongers have resided in London. Ealing Borough has always been Hong Kongers' top choice for residing from then and now. According to the 2011 census data, Ealing was one of the top 10 boroughs with the highest number of residents of Hong Kong origin. Among all local councils in the UK, Ealing is one of the top 10 most preferable councils for Hong Kong's new arrivals and stated as the second most desirable in Greater London, following Kingston upon Thames. Additionally, Ealing has been the 8th, having the highest number of BNO children admission in London in the last school placement period. It is known that more than £200,000 has been granted to local authority to ensure Hong Kongers have the best chance to thrive in London through the local Welcome Hong Kong Fund provided by the DLUCH. 8 local councils have applied for the funding, whereas Ealing is not on the recipients list. Therefore, will the council inform the public whether the council had applied for the funding? If so, of the details, if not, the reason for that.
Hi, Helen. Thank you for your question. Ealing has always been a borough of welcome and one that pulls together to support everybody who comes here. It's our diversity, our experience, and our sense of community that underpins the reason why people seek to come here and choose sanctuary here. The relationship between the people of the UK and the people of Hong Kong is built not just on the foundations of our history, but our shared principles. Furthermore, I'm proud that Ealing has a strong, established and connected community from Hong Kong who are reaching out and welcoming families and friends and providing help and support. It's a great example of the community pulling together to make things better. Our refugee supports team, who have been working tirelessly with a range of refugees, have had very little demand for support from the Hong Kong community, and therefore we have not yet needed to seek any funding to support Hong Kong arrivals. We, of course, are committed to keeping this under review, and if we identify any need, we will work with the community to seek additional support and funding. However, if I may, I'm pleased to recognise the great work of our schools and our education partners who are providing a warm welcome to our young people, providing ESOL classes to those who need them, and our Learn Ealing offer has had an amazing experience with skilled teams working with all communities, but especially designing and supporting our diverse range of refugee and asylum seekers with English language and other skills. We are grateful to the Mayor of London for the funding and the support that this operation has been supported with. This is in addition to the great work being undertaken by the Light Foundation in supporting people with ESOL and other needs. Ealing is committed to be a borough of sanctuary, and our support for under Homes for Ukraine or speedy responses to find homes for those fleeing Afghanistan, and our long-term support for refugees under the UN Humanitarian Assistance Programme is a testament to this ongoing programme.
So may I confirm, did the Ealing Council apply the Welcome Hong Kongers program? And also, will the council consider to apply the funding in the future? If so, of the schedule, if not, the reason for that?
As I've said, at the moment, we've not had any requests for that to happen. But when it does, we are reviewing it and we will most definitely ask for it if it's required.
Yeah, sorry. As our club start in the 2021 March, and we have regular meetings, and we have invited different councillors to join our meeting as well. However, at the moment, we don't have any support besides several, just 3 councillors have attended our meeting and showed their carings to us. And it is really disappointed for us because most of the people from Hong Kong to residents in Ealing, most of them, they are not refugees, I would say. We are like more like educated, working levels. Yeah, sure. Yeah. So that's why we don't have any app like asking for refugee support. Yeah, so
I will be really, really pleased to work with you. So could we have a chat about that? I'd be more than happy to come and visit you and work with you to make sure that everybody has the support that they need. So thank you.
thank you.
Thank you. Question from the member of the council. Any response to the question must not be extended 3 minutes. Supplementary question must relate to the original questions or from the answer given. So please keep in mind 3 minutes. Councillor Jammu to Councillor Blake, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can the portfolio holder provide an update to providing the real living wage to home care workers?
I can indeed. Thank you for the question. Building on our manifesto commitment, we are delivering the real living wage ahead of schedule. We can confirm that effective November the 14th, more than 200 personal assistants, 75 staff working in extra care, and the staff working for 70 home care providers contracted by the council will be paid the real living wage of £11.05 per hour. Altogether, between 3,500 and 4,000 carers are employed by care agencies in Ealing, and the majority are women and from Black, Asian and minority ethnic communities. In May this year, we committed 8 million into adult social care, ensuring workers providing care to residents of their own home could finally be paid the real living wage. The only intervention from the short-lived Truss administration on social care was to brief that Boris Johnson's oven-ready reforms, which took 2 years to unveil, would be delayed yet again. In those reforms, they've altogether failed to provide workers with an uplift in pay, but in Ealing, we have made it our priority and ensured within our first 6 months, all home care workers will be receiving the real living wage. Thanks to the Tories' underfunding and undercutting of healthcare budgets, 1 in 10 social care posts in England are unfilled, putting both the NHS under strain and, more importantly, vulnerable residents at risk. In Ealing, we are supporting workers as much as we can, in contrast with Tory dither and delay. Faced with a cost of living crisis at a time when we desperately need to fix adult social care, we are so pleased to be able to announce that we are putting into action the commitment we made to introduce the real living wage ahead of schedule. This will make a huge difference to the pay packets and the well-being of care workers, and ultimately to the people they care for, who can be confident their carers are earning a decent living income.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. If I can also ask the portfolio holder just to carry on from that. A recent study from the Health Foundation found that 1 in 5 care home workers are in poverty or on the brink of poverty. Has the government acknowledged this report? And are there any plans to improve the state of the sector nationally?
What do you think, Councillor Rice? Decades of cuts and austerity have driven care workers into poverty. Across the country, 1/4 of care workers live in or on the brink of poverty. 1 in 10 experience food insecurity, and around 1 in 8 children of residential care workers are materially deprived. In Ealing, as we've said, we are committed to supporting home care workers and the vital support they provide to our most vulnerable residents. Low pay in social care reflects political choices. Sustained underfunding of social care by central government limits the ability of care providers to increase pay. In England, 13 years have passed since the publication of a national workforce plan for social care, and plans for care reforms, as I said, included nothing to increase staff pay. Steve Barclay, I think he's the current health secretary, is yet to make a public announcement, statement or policy update, and again shows the government's utter disregard to the pressure on the NHS and the residents who use social care.
Thank you. Councillor Malcolm to Councillor Mason, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Given the comments by Rupa Hook at a conference fringe event where she called Kwasi Kwarteng superficially black, does the leader agree that these comments were totally wrong, and do you both condemn those comments? And if found guilty after the internal investigation, do you believe that she should be asked to resign her position as a local MP?
Madam Mayor, as the Leader of the Opposition is aware, that matter in question is subject to an internal Labour Party disciplinary process, and therefore it's premature for me to offer a comment at this time.
Do you have a supplementary question, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Have you personally asked her to resign her seat?
Well, again, let me repeat to the Leader of the Opposition that the matter is subject to a disciplinary process of the Labour Party, and I won't be offering a comment at this time. But what I will say to the Leader of the Opposition, if in asking his question, you know, of all the people to ask a question of internal disciplinary matters within the Labour Party, on Saturday will be 2 years since the findings of the EHRC, and I hope he would agree with me that there is nothing more important for disciplinary processes to be robust, fair and effective, and we will await the outcome of its findings.
Thank you. Councillor County to Councillor Costigan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We're getting regular reports of tree surgeons not giving notice to residents when they're going to particular streets. Cars are therefore often parked under the trees that require pruning, preventing work to be carried out. Very often, there's no clear timetable for when the tree surgeons are planning to return. How is the tree contract being monitored for performance?
Thank you, Councillor Conti. I'm not quite sure what Councillor Conti does when he's in the chamber, but he certainly doesn't listen to the answers to the questions asked. Perhaps you're keeping up on Twitter as to what's happening, who's resigning next from the current government. But I have been asked about what you've called our current tree contract on a number of occasions, including by the main opposition party opposite. And I have responded explaining that actually our contract, our tree contract, we ended it in March of this year. And the reason we ended it was because they were not performing up to the standard that we would expect. Since then, we've been working with a number of smaller contractors to try and see which of them would be able to perform best. Are they able to do what we need them to do? And whilst we have procured a new contract. That new contract, I'm delighted to say, I will be signing in about 10 days' time. And as part of that, we will have a set of new providers who I'm very hopeful will be able to provide the quality service that we expect in Ealing, and that is why we have re-procured this service. What I would say, however, is that since this service was last procured, the cost of some items that previously might have cost us £6 has now gone up to £65. And that shows the impact inflation is having on this area. So I would ask Councillor Conti, perhaps he could go back and speak to the current Chancellor, Mr. Hunt, who I believe is looking at funding over the next few weeks. And we will have, I think, a fiscal event, otherwise known as a budget. If perhaps he could think of councils when he is coming up with the numbers there, and perhaps think of things like trees. We want to plant 50,000 trees. I know some of your residents are concerned and want pruning done and want leaves picked up. We can't do any of that if the gigantic cuts that we see coming down the rail from your government actually come to pass.
Okay, go ahead.
Thanks. The reason we keep asking these questions, Councillor Costigan, is because nothing ever improves when it comes to tree pruning. So you may be re-procuring with a new contractor, but these are issues that are happening today with the people that you're saying you're hoping going to provide a good contract. So I'm hoping that it will be monitored in the future. And can I ask, in terms of ensuring that adequate notice is given to residents, what steps are being taken to ensure that actually the contract is going to be delivered properly, so that when the tree surgeons do come and prune the trees, that the adequate notice is given to residents living on those streets?
Thank you for the supplementary, Councillor Conti. As I explained, the previous contract was with Advanced Tree Services that did expire at the end of March, and they were unable to continue as a provider in the borough. They weren't actually putting in place what we required of them. And we are now taking steps to ensure the services that they were previously offering are maintained whilst we've been going through the re-procurement process. We used our social value policy whilst doing the re-procurement to make sure that in re-procuring our tree contract, we did it in line with what we promised we would do in our manifesto. But in the meantime, we used a number of smaller contractors during the summer, and we offered a number of approved contractors the opportunity to compete for work on a small quote, a mini quotation basis, so that they were able to respond to demand. And I would certainly agree that not all of them were as good as we would want them to do. It was a test for some of them, I must say, but I am absolutely sure that our new contract, which will start shortly, and as I say, I will agree in the next 10 days, that will provide the standard of service that we want in Ealing and is the reason that we re-procured this contract in the first place.
Thank you. Councillor Brett to Councillor Danley. Who's Councillor Brett?
Can the portfolio holder provide an update on how Ealing Council is supporting the lowest income households during the cost of living crisis via Ealing Council Tax Reduction Scheme?
Thank you, Councillor Brett. Madam Mayor, if you don't mind, I'll be taking this question. So first of all, when I was asked this question to update on this last time, I commented on the 40-year high inflation rates that we faced. Back then, we had a fumbling government. We had an intervention package that barely scratched the surface in providing families for real viable support. And of course, they say a week's a long time in politics, 3 months. Here we are with 2 failed prime ministers, 3 botched chancellors, more U-turns in the plumbing section of Wicks, and a revolving door of Tory chaos. It continues to be Labour and only Labour who are continuing to support people, provide families with real help and stand with them in the face of this Conservative-caused cost of living crisis. And even then, we continue to stand out from other councils. Councillor Brett asked about the council tax support scheme, which is already amongst the most progressive in the country, but we're looking to take it even further in the coming months. We are currently consulting on expanding the maximum discount for from 75% to 80% for those who are in the non-protected category, which will directly support those who are falling in the lowest income bands. We've already also delivered over 8,000 vouchers of over £100 to eligible pensioners, delivered vouchers to over 15,000 families to support them with free school meals over the holidays, at a time when Tory councils, on the other hand, have actually stopped giving out vouchers to those on free school meals. And over 95,000 residents with an energy rebate payment of £150 to help them with the energy crisis. Whilst many Tory boroughs, as I say, have stopped paying and supporting those on free school meals, it is Ealing Labour that continue to do so. But alongside them, we've supported carers and families with preschool children who are also struggling. But we don't stop there. Whilst this government vilifies those ineligible for recourse to public funds, we've heard a bit about some of the challenges that refugees face this evening. We appreciate that they are people just like you or I trying to survive in this Tory disaster zone. We also recognise the amazing role that the voluntary and community sector do in supporting this and many other groups facing food poverty. And that's why I'm proud to say that we are also issuing from our pot £100,000 to support the voluntary and community sector organisations in supporting those most vulnerable in their local communities and make sure that everyone across our 7 towns has access to necessary support. But again, Madam Mayor, that is not all. We've been delivering on our key pledge to support people with delivering decent living incomes. We've had 6 job fairs already this year. We've delivered over 1,000 jobs and apprenticeships, 780 new qualifications and 55 new apprenticeships. I could go on, but I appreciate I've got a time limit. So whilst the Conservatives have been crashing our economy, we have been fighting to provide the support and services that people desperately need. Madam Mayor, our residents shouldn't pay the price for their failure. Only Ealing Labour is on their side.
Thank you. Councillor Wall, supplementary question.
Yeah, thank you, Mrs. Mayor. Can the portfolio holder provide an update on the work being done to provide warm spaces for residents over the winter?
Thank you, Councillor Wall. And I first of all thank Councillor Donnelly, who's leading on this work. But we know that just how difficult this winter is going to be for thousands of our residents. Anybody who's just walked down and up and down this high street will see the number of people, sadly, all too many, already trying to sleep in these freezing cold temperatures, the rain and everything else that's being thrown at them. So we want to ensure that we are doing our bit at Ealing Council to ensure that as many people as possible have access to warm spaces throughout the day. As part of our wider package to help residents across the borough with the rising cost of living, we've already identified existing warm spaces run by the council, which residents can find on our website, and we can share details with councillors to make sure that people are aware and share those details. But I'm also pleased to announce that we are also going to be giving grants to voluntary and sector organisations, along with the faith organisations, to provide further warm spaces, or to extend their current warm space provision that they are already running. These will be free, non-judgmental places where residents can keep warm and save money on their heating costs, as well as a place where residents can avoid social isolation, which can itself be a real killer, and spend time with others and receive vital support and critical advice. We know that we have an important role to play, Madam Mayor, in providing support to residents to help them access warm spaces, but we also want to harness the power of the incredible voluntary and community and faith sectors in our borough to help ensure that we can reach as many people as possible. Between signposting residents to our warm spaces and empowering the community and voluntary sector to provide further support, we can ensure we can provide a warm welcome to anyone struggling to heat their home this winter. I'm really proud of the work that Ealing Council is doing, and I hope that all members across all sides can join us in welcoming the package that we have put forward this evening.
Thank you. Councillor Wall to Councillor Mason, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Does the leader agree with Labour Party conference that, quote, Labour must make a commitment to introduce proportional representation for general elections in the next manifesto?
I have to say, Madam Mayor, there's sort of a delicious irony of the Liberal Democrats even asking that question, because, of course, but for a perverse outcome of the first past the post system, the Liberal Democrats, who got 15% of the total votes at the last election, are now the official opposition, despite the fact that the Tories, how much did they get? 25%. In fact, if we had had proportional representation at the last set of local elections, Councillor Ball wouldn't have even gotten to ask that question under the proportionality rules. So, Councillor Ball, I'll ask you, do you really want to ask this question?
Sorry, thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, okay, if we want to look at it locally, does the leader agree with me that a large single party majority delivered by first past the post is unhealthy for democracy?
What's unhealthy for democracy, Madam Mayor, is an opposition that doesn't do its job. How selfish. 2 questions this evening that they had the opportunity to ask. They could have asked about the cost of living, could have asked about mortgages, they could have asked about inflation in food, people on the streets. What have they done? They've asked questions about their own narrow self-interest, about their power, right? Their power. Let's not forget, it was the Liberal Democrats who entered into a sorry deal with the Conservatives in 2010, where they traded away austerity for PR, for a referendum in which 68% of the country voted against, where they put their narrow self-interest ahead of the national interest, that has seen us lose 160 million out of our budgets. So don't take any lessons from the Liberal Democrats on proportional representation. They are the ones who have set it back by a generation.
Councillor Buckley to Councillor Costigan.
Can the portfolio holder confirm whether the government is providing sufficient support to local authorities to retrofit homes, which saves residents money and tackles the climate crisis?
Thank you, Councillor Buckley, for the question. So we're facing a pretty catastrophic situation at the moment, and it really shows us that we need to act on energy efficiency in our homes. Action to retrofit housing to deliver warmer homes, lower household bills and good jobs while reducing energy use and emissions is an obvious part of the solution for the multiple crises that we're facing, from the cost of living crisis that was just mentioned to the climate emergency, to the need to increase energy security following Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Unfortunately, the short answer to the question, Councillor Buckley, is no. The government has failed to take this issue seriously for a decade and is still not doing enough. Indeed, the Independent Committee on Climate Change recently said there's a shocking gap in government policy when it comes to energy efficiency in homes. While it promised significant public spending in 2019, remember that manifesto 2019, they say they're going to bring it back again, we'll see. And they committed to new policies last year. The government is yet to deliver on this at all. Installations of insulation remain at rock bottom in this country. The average annual energy bill for UK households is around £40 higher than it should be if we had taken the action we said we would take over the last few years. Furthermore, when the government published its energy security strategy in April, so this is only in April when we knew everything that's going on at the moment, they again missed the opportunity to act in this really obvious area by failing to provide additional funding for energy efficiency. UK homes contribute about 14% of our greenhouse gas emissions. So it's really important that we take action on this. And we are the leakiest, we have the leakiest homes in Europe in the UK. Emissions from buildings are higher now, in fact, than they were in 2015. So it's getting worse, and properly insulating our homes would allow us to cut gas imports by 15% and reduce fuel poverty at the same time. So insulation should be a national mission, but it isn't. It's something that we need to start doing now, but we aren't. And that's because of the people who are running this country. It's not a priority for them. Labour, on the other hand, back plans to retrofit 19 million homes, backed by investment of 6 billion a year. And I'll continue myself to support these efforts to press the government on the issue, to get it to invest at the scale that we need, in the solutions that we need for energy security, the climate crisis and cutting bills. But I have to say, I'm pretty certain that it will be a Labour government who will deliver on this.
Thank you. Supplementary question for Harpenden, please.
Thanks, Mayor. Can the portfolio holder provide an update on Ealing Council's plan to retrofit homes? Sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Dear. So as I say, the government is failing on this, but actually in Ealing, we are delivering as much as we possibly can with the sometimes minuscule amount of funding we get from government and with some of our own funding as well. So Labour councils are stepping up and retrofitting is no exception. At the election, we pledged to retrofit 750 homes in Ealing, supporting residents to insulate, to power, to heat and to cool their homes sustainably, reducing energy bills and harmful emissions at the same time. And we're proud to be at the forefront of technology in the UK. It's actually Ealing Council that is testing the solutions that will be the future in this area. And we're piloting schemes such as infrared electric wallpaper. I saw it myself. It's absolutely amazing, and it could be a real game changer in this area. We're putting this wallpaper in 25 homes at the moment in Greenford. And we're also undertaking whole house retrofitting using the Energy Sprung technology on the Trees estate in South Ealing. And that's more than 50 council homes in that area that we're currently doing a whole house retrofit. And this will bring down energy bills at a crucial time for some of our lowest income households. But we're also leading a consortium of 13 boroughs across London to retrofit at least 2,500 homes in the whole of London. And that again will give poor households the opportunity to transform their homes with a grant to pay for energy efficient improvements like low carbon heating systems, insulation and smart heating controls. We know we can achieve the best results by working together with other boroughs, and what we're doing is we're identifying contractors that we can work with and then helping them to ramp up what they're putting in across London. And our work doesn't stop there. As part of our £1 million Pioneers Fund, which is led by Councillor Mahfouz here, we supported local innovation in something called HighWave. Now, this company HighWave is making waves in the renewable energy industry, and they're exactly the kind of green local business that we're excited about having in Ealing, and they are based here in our borough, and they are supporting the energy efficiency sector in our borough, and it's going to be crucial to creating highly skilled jobs with decent living incomes, strengthening Ealing's economic growth and keeping money locally. So unlike the government, Ealing Labour knows we need to prioritise and champion energy efficiency and retrofitting. Tackling the climate crisis is one of our top priorities. And in the absence of government action, we are doing everything we can as Ealing Labour to make a difference.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Wason to Councillor Kamaljeet Nagpal, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can the portfolio holder update members on the Young Adult Centre in Southall?
Thank you, Councillor Wesson, for your question. Madam Mayor, last year we made a commitment to find a new permanent home for the Southall Young Adult Centre. We started a big conversation with young people and the public in Southall about how we would do that. Over 3,000 young people from across Southall came together to make clear that they wanted to keep the YAC where it is. And from listening to them, we agree. At the core of our consultation was a commitment to co-design our proposals with young people, putting them at the heart of what we do. This has not gone away. We are going to continue to work with them as we improve the centre, upgrade and revamp the facilities to make sure that the centre is truly reflective of the needs of the community. We'll be carrying out the necessary improvements over the next year with the hope of having the centre back up open by summer 2023. We're also developing a sustainable funding model to ensure that the YAC gets the necessary improvements to meet its important requirement of being a safe, inclusive place for all young people and an important community asset that can be used by all. And the improvements will help us reach our ambitious targets of having 20,000 attendees across our 3 wonderful youth services this year alone, increasing year on year. Not only that, but we will also be working with our young people across Southall to make the YAC even better and to find a way to put it into their hands permanently for good. We know that the best decisions are the ones taken together. And as part of our commitment to running an open, transparent and inclusive council, we will continue to work with our young people who need the YAC most to find out how we can make it even better for all of those who use it or will use it.
Thank you. Supplement question from Alexander. Yes.
Can the portfolio holder update members on how young people in the borough performed in their summer exams as the first group to sit them since 2019?
Thank you, Councillor Alexander. Madam Mayor, as you all know, the last 2 years have been incredibly difficult for all of us, but especially our young people, who not only missed out on 2 years of socialising and development, but also 2 vital years of their education, thanks to a flailing government that could barely set clear guidance, let alone stick to its own rules. Need we forget Partygate? Since March 2020, pupils had 2 interrupted and incomplete years of education. From complete lockdowns without adequate technological support to facilitate online learning, exasperating digital exclusion, to the government offering children, teachers and parents as the shook troops of the pandemic by opening schools without adequate safety measures in place. Our young people have faced an uphill battle directly put upon them by the Conservative government. In spite of this, our young people have shown what they are truly made of this summer. As the first cohort to sit formal exams since 2019, having missed out on a year of their 2-year courses for GCSEs, they have exceeded expectations. In Ealing, students in our schools achieving a standard pass in English and maths is 77%. That's an increase on 2019 and above both the London and national average. Our attainment 8 score per pupil is up to 53.6, another increase on 2019 and above both the London and national average. And Ealing is provisionally the top local authority in the country following our Progress 8 score, as was the case in 2019. I could not be prouder of the incredible achievements our young people, our teachers and our schools have achieved in such challenging and unforeseen circumstances. But once again, the Tories threaten and undermine the future of our young people. Kit Malthouse, the previous Education Secretary, you'll be forgiven if you can't keep up with who's in and who's out, came out with a number of shocking, altogether damaging statements in his short tenure as Education Secretary. Not most surprising, as his statement on the 2023 examinations of returning to pre-pandemic grading in 2023, with no substantive support for pupils to catch up on years of vital in-person learning. This epitomizes the government's utter disregard for young people and the education sector as a whole. Young people have suffered enormously under the pandemic, and for the government to write off the last 2 years with no support or regard for the future or embitterment of our young people showcases once more how desperately a general election is needed.
Thank you. Thank you, Kamal. You finished in the time. Thank you. Now is the opposition group motion for debate. I call Councillor Gallant to move the opposition motion for debate. Only for 4 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I hope we even be less than that. I'm actually getting up to propose a motion designed to hold the majority group, the council leadership, to accounts and also give them a chance to show what they've achieved. Because we've long thought that motions in this chamber should relate to the work of the council and not be an excuse to rant about national government, deflecting responsibility, as we've heard tonight. Yeah. So some might say it's too early to judge, they need more time. But I tell you, no administration has ever achieved anything by being patient. In fact, it's impatience that's the key virtue in local government. You've got 4 years. Look at what Ealing's Conservative-led council achieved between 2006, 2010. A vast improvement in cleanliness in the borough and initiation of important developments like Acton Gardens. But they never felt they had the luxury of time and they rushed to get on with the job. Now, this was supposed to be a new or newish administration brimming with energy. When you look at the deliverables stated in the council plan for 22-23, you see a lot of good intentions, but it is the tangibles by which this council will be judged. Now, the building we're in tonight is an iconic Ealing landmark, yet it clearly needs renovating. Plans for its conversion into a hotel was passed in 2019 and upgraded since September 2022, yet construction is nowhere in sight. Wait for it, largely because the council failed to foster all-important good relations with the Victoria Hall Trust. And the plans now turn on a postponed hearing that will decide who actually owns the Victoria Hall. So maybe it's time to call it quits and abandon this project. And many residents we know opposed the redevelopment of the Percival House site, largely because the plans included a 20-story tower. But the plans were pushed through by the council regardless. Neither the Mayor of London nor the Secretary of State chose to intervene. And there has been no progress. Is it because the plans are too expensive to implement post-pandemic and the developer no longer wants to proceed? Is it to do with reciting an electricity substation? The point is that this project can't be just left to wither on the vine. We say, get on with it or give up and cancel it. And Gurnell, residents who love this facility keep asking me what's being done, and all I can say is that consultation continues and I await the findings of the Gurnell Sounding Board. Well, they look at me, as you can imagine, they look at me. They rightly want concrete progress. Madam Mayor, we say that if no progress is being made on these very literally concrete responsibilities, then there can be no confidence in the plethora of good intentions contained in the council plan. Residents see big plans for improving access to the council website, yet demands for progress are met with lame complaints about the size and scope of the site. Businesses attending the launch of the Inward Investment brand wanted to hear, well, what they heard was romantic speeches about the 7 towns. And what they want to know about is the 7 linear meters on the pavement outside their businesses and how much they're going to have to pay for it. What about the cycle quiet ways? How many charging points have actually been installed since May? Amidst all the fine promises, we think there's actually a lack of confidence, lack of fortitude, and lack of sheer grit in this council. So we urge them to focus in, make progress, and make it soon. And I urge all members to support our motion.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Stratford, please, 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I rise to second the motion from the Conservative group. As Councillor Gallant has said, there are a plethora of ways that we could be talking this evening that this administration has failed to deliver. Councillor Gallant was, I think, quite generous in saying that you are a newish administration. This Labour administration has had 12 years to get on with the job. And indeed, some of the projects that that he talked about have been dragging on for 8 years. Now, we could talk about a lot of things, but I'm going to focus on what's on the order paper, which is construction projects and recycling. Now, I could talk again about the cinema across the road that again is delayed, that this council seems to fail to do anything with. I could even talk about the failed LTN schemes, another infrastructure project that, thank goodness, Councillor Mason saw the political writing on the wall and scrapped. But actually, what we know about this administration is they are totally enthralled to developers and will want to build anything anywhere as high as possible, as small as possible, that they can get away with. We only have to see last week in my own ward of Twyford Abbey, where they pushed through yet another development on metropolitan open and green space. And what was the leader of the council's response to that? Not that he was concerned for the air cleanliness for the residents in that area who objected. No, he just insulted them on Twitter and told them that they were agents against progress. How is that a responsible way going forward? But instead of that, they continue to push forward with these 2 buildings here in Central Ealing, the Town Hall and Percival House, which have made, frankly, no progress since 2014 when the cabinet reports first came out in front of them. Not a single brick has been laid, not a single rabbit hutch has started, not a single person has moved in. And why is that? Because of the total inertia of this council to ever get any of its infrastructure projects going. And instead of that, they waste endless time with legal battles against the wishes of residents, I've never known a council to spend so much money against the wishes of the people that it's supposed to elect. That is the simple matter of fact. Rather than allowing this lame dog to limp on, the council should bullet both projects, restore the town hall to a proper community hub, deal with Percival House to build a low-rise housing place there with the offices that this council needs, rather than these grandiose schemes. And instead of that, focus their attention on the thing that the people of this borough actually want, which is a new swimming pool at Gurnell, rather than endless, never-ending conversations, false conversations with false promises of some delivery somewhere in the future. They should sit down and say, we are going to invest the money to build a new 50-metre swimming pool in this borough, make it a sports hub, and actually deliver something for the residents of this borough. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Now is a Councillor Manro, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I just take a moment out, because I think something significant happened this Diwali day on the 24th. A Hindu, Punjabi, Asian, Indian, African, whatever you might say, actually became the Prime Minister of this country. And I think that's a moment of great significance for our country. to show how our country has developed over, what, 50, 60 years, where somebody can come to this country as a refugee and no position in this country is not available to them if they work hard enough and study. And I think it is really important we recognize that the diversity of this country is such an enormous gain for many, many people who've come to this country. So I just wanted to put that on record. I happen to be Hindu Punjabi, so it's helpful, but it is a pity a little bit that there is in the wrong party. It's a bit like my brother and my nephew, they're also in the wrong party. I wish they were in the right party and that would have been more joyous, but never mind. We can still be grateful that this country is so brilliant and so great and gives people the ability to progress. Now let's turn to the motion as outlined. Can I just say, look, at the end of the day, the Tories live in this land of milk and honey. They always seem to think that we could just wave our hands and make things happen. What's happened in these last 6 months, whilst we've been elected in May, we've had people trash the economy. We've had 2 years of COVID. Building costs have gone up by over 50, 60, 70% in terms of materials. Developers are going to fall over. House building is coming to a halt. Many of the projects that housing associations are running, they're coming to us and saying, we can't financially afford these projects anymore. Very large housing associations that we've been working with for many years have come to us and said, these projects are no longer viable. We have the same issues with our own projects. Yes, and we are the custodians of public money, and we're not going to go and carry out on a project and then just wish that everything would be okay, as Liz Truss did and Kwasi Kwarteng did. Just if you wish hard enough, you can change the world. And they found out what the reality is. When you put something forward, which is completely outrageous, the city just says, get lost. Interest rates went up to 5% for gilts, and all of that thing came crashing down. And it's choices. We see Tory governments make choices around who pays for what. So they were going to give a tax cut to the top 2,500 taxpayers in this country, and the average tax cut for them was going to be £400,000 a year. And that's an average. So some people would have got £4-5 million each.
Time, please.
And that was going to cost £1 billion, right?
Please.
So that's the choices, right? So
Time
things
up.
like, first of all, we will
Please.
not move forward
Member.
till finished. Oh my God. What we will do is one more sentence.
Next time, please. Councillor Malcolm, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think on this motion, the Conservatives have been a little generous, that there are far more failings than just those 4 listed. There are 3 or 4 others that all spring to mind, which affect the whole borough. And so the first one is we repeated this in May, I think it was, where tenants across the whole borough, many thousands of them, upwards of 10,000, were at risk from poor housing safety and the inspection regime that this council followed. And they even reported themselves to the authorities because at least it admitted it had done wrong. It acknowledged it after a long time. There were areas such as gas, electrical, asbestos and water safety, things that you wouldn't want one of those to affect your property or your house, whether you're a tenant or you own the house. And many of these affected many people across the whole borough. What people don't like from that situation, the council may have fessed up to the authorities and it may be fixing those problems, but when it has fixed them, there is no guarantee, no confidence in that situation that the council will not mess up in the future. It's made promises, but will it deliver in the future? That those tenants cannot have a guarantee anymore. There are too many complaints as well. So when these problems occur, you make a complaint to the council. One resident waited 6 years for a leaking roof. Now, it may not be a simple problem sometimes to fix a leaking roof, but 6 years is a totally long time. And that is why maladministration was handed out as the offence there. And the council spokesperson said, whilst we are disappointed at the persistent failure of service execution, and then went on to say we learn lessons. Well, the council can say it learns lessons, but actually then it fails again. So in my local neighbourhood on the Beaconsfield estate, Councillor Basutil had to get involved in a very complex case where it involved a range of different council departments. But many of those residents had complained for years and had no communication from the officers. And only when Councillor Basutil got involved did some positives actually occur. And also making the complaints procedure online only for some of these people means many vulnerable people on our estates are excluded. Then also another issue is the air qualities or lack of air quality in Southall. It's been in the news recently. The council appears to treat residents like a nuisance. When they complain, they're ignored or not listened to properly. The council in this particular case needs to be more proactive with the Environment Agency and make sure that these odour complaints are tackled. Another example near me is where there is a dairy that has been allowed to expand a number of times over the past 10 or 15 years, and yet this council has not had the ability to properly curtail some of the negative noise activities that go on there. And those residents that back onto that dairy suffer.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Costigan, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, we should perhaps forgive Councillor Gallant for not being fully aware of the great work Ealing Labour is doing on improving recycling and tackling the climate crisis. No doubt he's been fixated by his party's kamikaze budget and their trashing of the economy to be bothered about what's happening locally. Contrary to the badly researched motion he's put before us, recycling rates in Ealing are in fact some of the best in London. 2021 figures released by his own friends in government list Ealing as number 2 out of the 32 London boroughs for recycling rates. And it's not just recycling. We've also ensured none of our waste goes to landfill, and instead we use it to create much needed energy. So we're already leading the way in London on recycling, and we have a plan to recycle over 50% of household waste by the end of the year. We're doing this by continuing to roll out food waste recycling to flats and doing the hard work of knocking on doors to explain to people who don't currently use their food bins what the benefits are. But in contrast to Ealing's success, recycling rates across the country as a whole are falling. So much so, it seemed like the Conservatives were almost going to recycle a failed Prime Minister to help with the stats. But getting people to recycle and to stop putting food waste in their black bins is not easy, and it takes political will. There's a limit to how much persuasion can achieve. If the government really wants to ramp up recycling, what we need is a new system where the polluter pays. Now, the government has been saying they're going to do this for quite a long time. They keep running consultations about it. But what actually happens? Very little. Because in reality, they are not the slightest bit interested in increasing recycling if it means they might annoy their mates in big business. Just like they aren't interested in tackling climate change if it means they have to tax the big oil companies. Last week, we heard BP made £26 billion in profits, but didn't pay a single penny in windfall tax. Why? Because the government created a massive loophole that encourages energy companies to keep burning fossil fuels, the cause of climate change, as a way of getting out of paying tax. I would accuse the government of being all talk and no action on climate change, but they don't even talk the talk. Theresa Coffey refusing to sign up to legal targets for nature recovery and clean air, Rishi Sunak refusing to go to COP27 and barring the King from going, makes clear they don't care about the climate crisis. Although now I hear Sunak might do a U-turn. He might be shamed into going by Boris Johnson. I mean, shamed by Boris Johnson. You couldn't make it up. Madam Mayor, Labour won a stonking majority from the people of Ealing in May this year. And in just 6 months, we're already on track to be top of the class on recycling. But the Conservative motion, Madam Mayor, seems to suggest we should have done more. Perhaps it's because in a lot less than 6 months, just 44 days in time, they managed to tank the entire economy of this country. In 44 days, they took a hatchet to our living standards, a hatchet to our global reputation, and they'll shortly be taking a hatchet to our public services. So would I trust the Conservatives in Ealing to help tackle the climate crisis? Would I trust them to run our top class recycling service?
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I wouldn't trust them to put out their bins on the right day.
Thank you. Councillor Conti, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As my colleagues have highlighted, there are a number of areas where progress isn't being made. I just wanted to focus on a couple of others. Firstly, on customer services, for an administration that says it's open, residents can often feel like the council's shut. Whether it's trying to get a response by telephone, reply by email, customer service just doesn't seem to be working. And when will the administration get to a grip on this? Just in the last week, we've had a resident who's not been able to renew their CPZ permit online. They have 3 answer phone messages, no response. A resident who contacted the council's planning department multiple times about an overdue outcome on a planning application. Again, no response. And a resident who just can't get answers about repairs on their council property. Time and time again, it feels like the shutters are being drawn down when residents want to get in touch. So when will the administration deal with this? The second area is on the environmental agenda, the council's commitments to regrow and rewild our borough. And we heard from Councillor Costigan earlier that the climate emergency is our the council's number one priority. It would help if they weren't removing 150 trees from Twyford Abbey or building on metropolitan open land, because it often seems it's just lip service. What is the point of environmental protections that this council won't follow? Even the GLA said it would be inappropriate to build on metropolitan open land in Twyford Abbey. So despite all their commitments in their manifesto, it fails to materialise when it actually comes to it. So it's time for the council to actually deliver on its commitments and stop paying lip service. Thank you.
Thank you. Council Liskov, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
It's interesting listening to this debate here and comments, especially from how Councillor Munro was heckled when he brought up about taxes being withdrawn for the very wealthy. When in fact, when we look at our own financial circumstances, which dictate what we can and cannot do, that's unfunded tax cuts and reductions in financial provisions for local authorities are at the core of a lot of these reasons. So while I welcome the brevity of the motion, kind of missing a few key facts. Maybe it's missing like the 160 million pounds that we've lost in about 10 years. There was one council, Peterborough, who had a wrapped knuckled because they could be possibly failing to set a balanced budget by the minister, their own Conservative council, criticised by their own Conservative minister. When it was criticised, it was Conservative. Just get with the programme there, Councillor Stafford. So they thought they might have to dispose of their town hall, such was their financial position. We're not in that position here, but we do have to think about our civic assets. We have assets that were built that are no longer meeting our current standards. We have assets that are no longer used as they used to be. Why? We don't have as many staff in them. So we have to think about how we use those products. I've been at many meetings, whether it's general purposes, whether it's overview and scrutiny, whether it's scrutiny panel, where Gurnell has been discussed, where the town hall has been discussed. And it's quite clear there are lots of complex reasons. But the driving factor is that we have to think that we're not in a honeymoon situation. We're not in a situation of unfettered budgets. And that goes on year and year. So we need to think about what we're going to do. Camden repurposed their town hall. I've got a new town hall. We've got Hounslow down the road, did away with their civic centre. I've got a new town hall and I've got housing. So we're not new in this game and we have to think about what we're going to do with our assets. We need to move them forward, but these are complex issues and we inherited a lot of issues that other councils don't have with the charitable trust that owns part of this building, as they very well know. So it's not a simple issue. But it's kind of interesting that the brevity of this motion misses so much. Many a time I've been at this meeting where the use of wheelie bins was criticised by the second opposition time and time again. But that's probably the single factor which caused our recycling to leap ahead. And yet time and time again, they would just hark back to it and say, why did we introduce it? Well, that was a bold decision which actually improved our recycling, made it simpler, quicker, easier than most of others. And we still have a recycling rate which is leaps ahead of Wandsworth in its 20%, Westminster in its 20%, and we should be proud of that. So get real. Brevity is missing out so much in this motion. Let's get on with
Thank
it
you.
and
Thank you.
vote against. Thank you.
Councillor Ward, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I rise to support this motion. We put forward an amendment which sought to widen its scope by pointing out more Labour failings, including some beyond central Ealing, such as failure to act on the Southall air quality issue, but our amendment was ruled out of order. So this motion is a little too gentle on the administration by confining itself to 4 points of criticism, but those 4 points are well made. The saga of the Masscraft scheme continues to drag on, with the administration committed to a hotel scheme for the town hall that relies on passing the Victoria Hall to the hotel company. The problem with that is that the Victoria Hall is not the council's to dispose of. It was built by public subscription, Victorian era crowdfunding, and belongs to the people of Ealing in perpetuity. This administration is currently wasting hundreds of thousands of pounds of Ealing Council taxpayers' money to fight local residents in court over this issue. And when the administration loses, as seems increasingly inevitable, in addition to these legal costs and the residents' costs that it'll have to pay, it's contracted to pay an indemnity to Masscraft of over £250,000. The administration is spending money hand over fist on this doomed scheme. And at the same time, the fabric of the town hall is allowed to crumble further, reducing much needed revenue from weddings, community events, filming and so on. Moving next door to Percival House and its car park, we see that the administration's hugely unpopular plan for a 26-storey skyscraper just yards from the Grade 2 listed town hall has ground to a halt. We say that the administration should go back to the drawing board and return with a more suitable scheme which still delivers some much needed affordable housing in central Ealing, but does not overshadow the town hall. Continuing further west, residents of West Ealing are still without a swimming pool or sports centre after so many years, as the Gurnell redevelopment has also stalled. The administration's scheme was rightly defeated as it was completely inappropriate for metropolitan open land on which the National Planning Policy Framework only allows housing schemes if they're 100% affordable. As a member of the Planning Committee, I can't express a view on a new scheme that's likely to come forward, but I'll confine myself to noting that in addition to the issues that arose for the previous scheme, one of the options under consideration involves building on a site of nature importance. What I can comment on is how awful it is that residents have been locked out of Gurnell for so long, with the administration coming up with absurdly high estimates for even bringing back temporary sports use while the redevelopment scheme rumbles on. Finally, the motion refers to Ealing's falling recycling rates. I hope we can all agree that they're just not good enough. The administration crowed when recycling rates increased previously, but now that they're taking actions that reduce the recycling rate, such as closing the Stirling Road Recycling Centre, they must face the music. In conclusion, Madam Mayor, this administration simply must do better on these key schemes and targets. I beg to support this motion.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Councillors, new stop, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I find it extraordinary that Conservative colleagues would have the audacity to suggest the Labour administration has made no progress. We're making great strides on many of the commitments that the people of Ealing voted for. Madam Mayor, we are proud of what we achieved and what we will go on to achieve. What is clear, though, is that after a summer of chaos at number 10, the only thing that will stop us doing more is the Conservative cost of living crisis. The same Conservatives that tanked the economy and are now telling us that we need to pay the price. Our residents, our most vulnerable people, the people who deserve a brighter future, who deserve not to worry about how to feed their children or pay their heating bills. I read today, Conservatives on the front bench over there, that George Osborne is back at number 10, the grim reaper of austerity. So make no mistake, the cuts that are being claimed are essential, that were created by an ideologically out of control government, will hit public services and councils the hardest. And every time we think it can't get worse with this government, here comes Suella Braverman. whose vicious and vindictive and deliberate cruelty in the treatment of the most vulnerable makes her a Home Secretary whose own colleagues do not trust, whose own colleagues believe she's playing to the right of the Conservative Party. Frankly, the right of the Tory party is looking very much like its centre. She has invoked shameful and dangerous language in the pursuit of her ideological fantasies and dreams. And that is why I will leave other colleagues to respond to the nitpicking, time-wasting motion presented here by the Conservatives. They should be fighting to clean up their own party rather than attempting to pick holes in the Labour administration. It is no wonder that local Conservatives take cheap shots at Ealing Council. And what is going on right now at Manston is shameful to all of us, a crisis deliberately created for political ends. And I won't talk here about the cruel and inhumane policy of forcing the most vulnerable people into the most dangerous routes to safety. Council, they created that business model for people smuggling. And for those that do get here and claim asylum, a cruel, ineffective, dysfunctional asylum system, delays and incompetency, waiting times for a decision up 60%, cramped and unsafe hotels. If you're lucky, if not, you'll be one of the thousands crammed into Manston. And while they wait and they wait and they wait. And how much are they expected to live on? £5.84 a day for food, for clothes, for bus fares to school. And council, if only there was a solution. While waiting for a decision, asylum seekers cannot work at a time when we are crying out for skilled workers. I could not be more proud that when we have a Labour government, which we will, that Labour government will also lift the ban on working while waiting. This will save millions, help people help themselves out of poverty, help people lead dignified lives and become embedded in their communities, to be valuable, to contribute and to support their families.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Councillor Kumar, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And can I thank you and the Deputy Mayor for welcoming and meeting the Ealing Cubs and Weavers this evening. They asked several really good questions, and I had to change my speech a little bit because it's all been about government this evening. So I'll say what I feel like saying on that. But there are some really good questions on our local democracy and how it works. So they are the future of our borough, and we owe it to them as well to perform, deliver, but locally. Yeah. Okay. This was supposed to be a new, fresh look administration, and in some ways it is. Time is of essence, and crucially now more than ever. It would be a pleasant change if the fresh look administration moves forward progressively for the residents of Ealing. For the residents of Ealing, and not lay the blame on the government for everything that you're not, that you're unable to deliver. So, I mean, really, I think you really need to think a bit about that. I mean, the things like Percival House, for instance, which has caused so much distress for residents, local groups, and some vulnerable residents living in the vicinity. I mean, it's cost groups money. They've had to fundraise to actually, fight cases, Ealing Town Hall, bring that to the forefront. I mean, there's a lot going on there, and I think we need to be, appreciate what our residents want and be a little bit empathetic towards them. I mean, I recall the words of one resident on the dystopian vision for turning Ealing into a cluster of tall buildings. And that looks set to be confirmed in the local plan. So, I mean, that is another thing that needs to be looked at, and you need to, the borough needs to change the attitude to planning as well. Gurnell, again, a well-used local service and popular with residents, not only from within that vicinity, but all over the borough. I mean, they're waiting. So, they're waiting for the findings of the sounding board that was set up. And we've heard nothing further. So, like I said, I had to change it.
I'm really,
but Well, yeah, I had to send it. So there are things, I mean, customer services, I mean, people have had to wait, long periods, up to 15 minutes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I think, and I'm also proud to stand here today as the first Asian woman Conservative councillor that was elected in Ealing. And I'm very proud, and thank you to Councillor for appreciating and his words to our new Prime Minister, Rishi.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Blake, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. If the Tories want to sit here and talk about progress made in the last 6 months, I think I am very happy to do so, as other colleagues have done. But I am surprised they want to discuss progress at all, when the only progress their government is making is in driving up mortgage payments and creating more work for hard-pressed lectern manufacturers. In the last 6 months since the election, Ealing Labour has already made incredible headway on the ambitious targets we set ourselves, and we were elected on to the largest Labour majority in Ealing's history. We're delivering, I don't know if I mentioned it earlier, the real living wage to home care workers ahead of schedule. We've launched our Community Champions programme and already recruited some, supporting our pledge to establish a community-based support network to deal with social isolation and improve mental health resilience. We've secured planning permission for new state-of-the-art supported accommodation homes in the centre of Acton. We're on track to publish a new health and wellbeing strategy, focusing our public health and partnership working on tackling the deep health inequalities in our borough that were exacerbated by the pandemic. And we're driving down permanent care home admissions, helping keep people independent in their own homes for as long as possible, as promised. But that is only a fraction of what we have delivered and will deliver over this 4-year term. We are but the temporary custodians of this borough, but in just 6 months, we are delivering on our mandate. But what have they done, the Tories, in the last 6 months? They've held 2 leadership elections. They've had 3 prime ministers, one of whom spent his summer on holiday instead of getting a grip on the rising cost of living. They've held a disastrous mini budget that sent the UK gilt market crashing, putting pension funds at risk of running out of cash and setting the cost of borrowing soaring. And as the national COVID inquiry is about to kick off, what is the former health secretary who was in charge during the pandemic doing? He's going on a reality television program to eat various things. What we haven't had from the Tories is clarity on social care reforms. There's going to be a £3.5 billion gap in care funding by 2025, which will only grow as needs and complexities grow. Tinkering at the edges of care, introducing new pots of money for councils and health partners to bid for, and doing nothing more than relying on harsh winters to quell demand is no longer good enough. Fundamental reform must look at the very basics of care provision, not just who pays how much and when. Truly radical reform and the introduction of a national care service is long overdue, and the sector cannot afford to miss another chance. I am so impressed by all that we have achieved in the last 6 months in this corner of West London. Just imagine what we're going to achieve in government.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Young, please. Hello.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, I was discussing Ealing, which is more than the Labour Party's been doing this evening. 8 years, 8 long years since the first cabinet report on refurbishing the town hall and on demolishing Percival House. Councillor Yvonne Johnson was the portfolio holder then. I understand she's next down to speak. Perhaps she can tell us why nothing has happened in those 8 long years. Is it because she and her successor haven't got the heart to do anything about it? Gurnell swimming pool. Nobody yet has spoken about Gurnell swimming pool on the Labour side. 7.5 years, not quite as long a period. We've been waiting for a new swimming pool. Councillor Mahfouz was the portfolio holder then. He was supposed to be opening a new swimming pool in 2018, 4 years ago. What's happened since then? Absolutely nothing. There's nothing on the ground. People complain about the funding, but you could fund the refurbishment of Gurnell swimming pool out of the capital slippage in any 1 year of this council. It could be done if the will was there, but the will isn't there. And recycling rates. We were told by Councillor Mahfouz that the fortnightly rubbish collection would force recycling up to over 50%. Has it happened? And it's gone down and down and down since Councillor Costigan has taken charge. I understand from Councillor Costigan, the reason for this is that people are putting the bins out on the wrong days. I'm not sure that's really the reason why. This last year, we only got 47.4% against a target of 53%. I know from what Councillor Costigan said, the target for this year is only 50%. So our aspirations are going down, they're getting worse. And we're not second in the list on London boroughs. We're seventh now by the official figures, not the figures. We're seventh. I've checked the official figures, not the figures that the officers gave us. In the latest figures, and that's because 47% is not good enough. We ought to be doing better. Instead of talking about the national situation, we ought to be talking about Ealing and caring about Ealing and doing the right thing for Ealing, which is what this administration is not doing.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Johnson, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I think Councillor Young can be economical with truth, and his view of the economy depends from year to year. I remember him going on about brown and gold, but he's not going on about his own government and how they're managing the economy, which is absolutely shocking. I can't believe, who's normally quite sensible, Councillor Stafford was talking about the 12 years that it's taken us to do certain things. Well, as Councillor Blacker said to you, how long have we been waiting for social care to be fixed? How many years? I think it's all quite strange. We know what happened last May. The people of Ealing were pleased to put more Labour councillors in this chamber. They know what we're doing. They know we're doing the right things. Now, I don't want to say too much about Victoria Hall because it'd be sub judice, and I don't want to influence what might or might not happen in the court. That's completely out of our hands. That was not our fault. The reason for the hold up in both Gurnell and Percival House is to do with the economy again. Councillor Mahfouz told you that. It's to do with construction, it's to do with investments and so on. So those are things that are within the hands of national politicians. They're not in our control. So until those things get fixed, we won't be able to do everything that we'd want to do. Councillor Young says, yes, we could do it through slippage. Yes, we could, but we know that we don't actually know our budget. We're told that our budget's going to be so reduced, even more reduced. So we're going to need that slippage just to pay for social care, children, and so on. Now, Councillor Nagpal made the point that nobody sort of praises these things. Our schools are still doing very well despite COVID and all the problems. Our Councillor Polly over there said how we can be proud of what we've been doing the last 6 months. I think we can be proud of what we've done in the last 12 years. Nobody's saying that Acton Gardens wasn't a good idea, but we need money to do things. It's not enough just to have council tax money. We need money from government, and we know we've got cuts coming down the line. Of course, things are not perfect. Nobody ever says they are, but we've got a lot to do, and we want you to work with us. And I'm sure most of you in private, your hearts are in the right place, including Councillor Young's, because we do want Ealing to do well, but we all need to work together, and you are in a better position than us to influence members of government. So we do need that money from government, and we don't want all those cuts to come on us. So I think you need to think again, and I don't know where poor Gary was tonight, but I think the Liberals not quite reached. I said last time at council, I think he was about 5 or 6 out of 10. I think it's 4 tonight. And, you know, being the main opposition, he has to up his game a bit. So I think we need to think about the link between national and local politics. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Councillor Bacchini, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I stand to speak on the opposition's motion and could not believe that the Conservatives have even dared to mention Gurnell on their motion, because so far they contributed nothing, whilst only Labour has not only a vision, but a great plan for a good future for Gurnell, and is so keen to make it a place worthy for the whole community. Earlier this year, Labour-run Ealing Council established a Gurnell sounding board made up of a range of community representatives, leisure stakeholders, and including the Fitzhanglewood councillors. Now, as negotiations progress and we find a way forward, I am proud that the community have a seat at the table and a loud voice. The opposition know that the existing leisure centre building is beyond economical repair. Refurbishment of the center would represent poor value for money, and due to its age, would also be worse for the environment over the long term. The only option would be to carry out a new build replacement of the existing leisure center. They also know that the estimated cost of replacement is around £40 million, but it is their government that want to cut council services even further and make councils like Ealing pay for their reckless financial management. And to our dear Conservative councillors, in case you are not aware, your failing Conservative government delivered a cost of living crisis, which is the worst in the G7. Your failing Conservative government tanked the economy, which will make everything more difficult in the coming years. Your failing Conservative government crashed this country's international reputation, and its Home Secretary's only dream is to see a flight taking asylum seekers to Rwanda. Although I do agree with her on one thing, the Lib Dems went to bed with the Conservative Party and started the coalition of chaos. And now the good people of Ealing have to live this nightmare. But despite it all, we are here and we will always be on the side of our local community. Thank you.
Councillor Crawford, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't think I've formally had the opportunity to congratulate Councillor Glant on becoming the leader of the Conservative group. I was shocked my group by telling them that I've known Councillor Glant socially for a long time. And I'm sure although the Conservative group is smaller than he might have wanted it to be, he'll apply his customary zeal to repairing that. Unfortunately, this motion is rather lacking, as my colleagues have already pointed out. Many colleagues have already mentioned that we can follow the progress on Ealing Town Hall through the Victoria Hall Trust and that process. And Percival House, in respect of that development, will come to fruition because it needs to. And we should look at how we spend taxpayers' money and what we do with it, and we'll do it in concert with the community, which brings me to Gurnell. And it's really interesting to hear the Conservatives speaking about Gurnell. And Councillor Stafford, who I also respect, was talking about the need to make it a sports hub. Well, which local party on this council has the track record of delivering sports facilities in Ealing? The refurb and the introduction of a new Middlesex FA facility in Northolt, the re-provision of a swimming pool and a sports centre on Acton High Street, the refurbing and redevelopment of North Acton playing fields. Ealing Labour over many years has delivered these projects, Councillor Galland, every time over the express opposition of the Conservative Party and with no extra government funding for any of those projects. I do want to also talk about recycling. I mean, it's hilarious hearing the Conservative Party now repackaging themselves as the bastions of recycling, when for many years they didn't even want any wheelie bins, as my colleague Councillor Driscoll pointed out. You know, and the motion speaks about empty words, Madam Mayor. Well, you know, I'm frankly furious that the Conservatives would even consider describing the empty words of this Labour administration. 4 consecutive Conservative Prime Ministers have promised social care reform. Well, where is it? None of them have delivered it. Who's going to have to deliver it? This Labour Council is going to have to deliver social care reform, as Councillor Blacker has already outlined. We will need to lead the way on that, just as we led the way on saving our health services, on investing in local people and in local jobs. And as Councillor Mahfouz told us earlier this evening, we are already doing that work. We have invested in not one package of support for Ealing's families, not 2 packages of support for Ealing's families, but 3 so far to deal with a ruinous cost of living crisis caused in Downing Street. And I'll say to both the opposition parties, if they want to regain the respect of the Ealing electorate, they need to recognise the pain the people of Ealing are being put through at the moment by the Conservative government and their old enablers, the Liberal Democrats. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Oh, Councillor Rice, please, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, there is such a phrase as putting a band-aid on something, but we in Ealing Labour are not in the business of ineffective short-termism. Members opposite are aware that the cost of Gurnell and how this is not just a matter of a simple refurbishment, but a complete replacement is required, which may cost around £40 million in total. Refurbishment is not an option, as any attempt would be short-lived and offer poor value in return for the investment. We believe in having a plan that will work. One other area where it has worked for in Ealing for many years now is our high ranking when it comes to recycling. Rates are falling across London, although we still sit proudly in the top 3 London boroughs. And in my own ward of Norfolk Mandeville, I can report on new recycling bins, including new food waste bins arriving at our flats, accompanied by leaflets and plenty of advice on recycling, whilst the climate emergency is such a high priority for our residents. That is in addition to the increased wages for home care workers, the £3 million to plant 50,000 new trees, and £6 million into upgrading roads, tracks and pavements, all on the way since May. Last year, I went to Newcastle for the first time, and I saw the medieval defensive walls. I learned that the Victorians had demolished some of the walls in order to construct modern buildings in their place. It made me think of the town hall and how Victorians wanted to move forward and not look back. And that's why we have Victoria Hall in the first place. And I believe the Victorians of Ealing would want to see our Victoria Hall succeed for the benefit of the community. The members opposite are fully aware of the findings of the General Purposes Committee and the Victoria Hall Trust, and also of legal proceedings, and how we need the financial investment to preserve Victoria Hall within the Town Hall. And if members are still to work that one out, then there is little I can do to help them. Where I can help is present my relief when planning permission was granted for Percival House, and where 226 households in need of affordable housing would enjoy a roof above their heads that's close to the Victoria line and everything else that Ealing Broadway has to offer. What a fantastic offer for our residents on lower incomes. Although, Madam Mayor, members opposite demand that we abandon these 2 projects. I'm delighted to affirm that we on this side of the chamber are not like that, and we do not abandon our community, and we certainly do not abandon Ealing residents in desperate need of somewhere to live.
Thank you. Thank you. Next is Councillor Kamaljeet Nagpal, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, we're gathered today in the context of one of the most turbulent and disordered political times in living memory. A dying government in total chaos and disarray. 3 prime ministers since January and 4 chancellors. All of this will have profound, lasting consequences on the British public. The damage that the Conservative government have done in the last few weeks will take years to fix. People are facing huge increases on their monthly mortgage payments, and Jeremy Hunt is talking about making tens of billions of pounds in cuts to cover the cost of the Conservatives' reckless gamble. And yet, in a bizarre turn of events, it's Ealing Labour that's being asked to defend its record in office. Unlike the Ealing Conservatives, we can be proud of our record, and we've been working hard since May, and as Councillor Johnson put it, since the electorate in Ealing decided to put more councillors in this chamber, Labour councillors. Just last month, we increased wages for our home care workers, ensuring that every home care worker in Ealing is now paid the London living wage. And as Cabinet Member for a Fairer Start, I'm proud that 2 recent Ofsted inspections have brought our total number of council-run schools being rated as good or outstanding to an incredible 97%. After consulting with local residents and young people, we'll also be working with our young people across Southall to make the Young Adult Centre even better and to find a way to put it into their hands permanently for good. We want to ensure all our children and young people of all backgrounds get the best start in life, that they can receive the right support at the right time, have a great education, and are supported to become successful young adults. I'm proud of our council plan that outlines how we will do so and that we're committed to supporting excellent educational outcomes and ensuring children and young people are successful in life. And if I may quickly turn to the opposition, suggest them that our council plan has been rendered empty words. Madam Mayor, I don't think it's Ealing Labour that should be defending its record. I'm proud of our achievements since May, and I'm proud of our council plan that will continue this work and make a better Ealing for every resident. If the opposition want to debate a record in office, then they should look closer to home. It's their government that has utterly failed the British people, and it's time for a change. So, Madam Mayor, I will be voting against this motion.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Gallant, please sum up for 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Yeah, look, I mean, thank you very much, Councillor Driscoll. Thank you very much. You saw we produced a tight motion, and it was tight on purpose because it focused on Percival House, it focused on the town hall, it focused on Gurnell, and it focused on recycling rates. And that's the whole point. We don't have very much time. You as the council leadership don't have very much time. You don't have time to waste. You certainly don't have time to waste deflecting responsibility, which you do. And we've heard about, you've talked about everything under the sun. I mean, by all means, you know, we'll meet in the bar and we'll talk about the Conservative government. But here, we're talking about what you've done about those 4 issues. And it gets a bit serious. Councillor Newstub starts to talk about asylum seekers. That certainly wasn't in the motion. And asylum seekers, I of all people, this is a very serious point. I have all people, I've visited the hotels where asylum seekers, many of them are being housed in Ealing. It's not, I am not pointing at you because it's not on the motion. And I've visited them, I feel just as strongly about them. No, it's not part of the motion. It's focus. It's focus. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Councillor Ball, for elaborating on Victoria Hall and the problems there. This is not something the council can just look away from. It's got to grip it, focus in, and make progress. Councillor Costigan talks about recycling rates. They are going down. You cannot congratulate yourself if they're going down. You must say, we need to make them go up. And it's no good saying that every other council they're going down as well. You have to say Ealing's going to make them go up. Sorry. No, you have to take responsibility. There is a phrase, the buck stops here. And the leadership has developed a kind of deflecting machine to make the buck spin up in the ceiling and spin away somewhere. So anyway, we'll come back to the motion. I'm glad for some of the comments tonight. Councillor Crawford, thank you very much. We'll enlist you in our next election campaign. Thank you very much. And Councillor Buckley, I thought gave an excellent speech and really focused in on Gurnell. And this is the kind of dialogue which will lead to progress. So you know, I've failed. We've failed to keep you on track. But we've learned a few things, but I hope you've heard us. You don't have time. You need to be impatient to achieve what you need to achieve. And I urge members, all members, to support our motion tonight for the good of Ealing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So it's a good debate, so we can go on all those in the favor, please. Can you put your hands up? All those against? Any abstractions? No. So the recommendations are therefore carried. Now, motion called, sorry. I'm so excited. Thank you. Next.
Just remind me, 21 speakers.
Oh my God. Majority group motions for debate, but there's is 25 people they want to speak. So you have to mind that time is now. So can the consideration of this motion must begin by 8:50 p.m. at the latest. I call the Councillor Mason to move the majority group's motion for debates, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Since July, we've had 3 prime ministers, 4 chancellors, 5 secretaries of state for education, and 1 mini budget. A mini budget that has driven inflation to the highest rate since the 1980s, that has pushed food bills and energy bills to the highest rates that they have been for decades, and mortgage rates, the highest in 3 decades. 1 million families in 1 year alone facing, like the 9,000 here in this borough, an average of £500 per month increase, with consequential impacts on the rental market and so much of what is happening in our economy. In just 5 short weeks, the government have set the destination of our economy for the next 5 decades, and I tell you, it's not pleasant. The Tories have trashed and crashed our economy. And whilst Baron Stafford of bluster and Lord Gallant of guffaw live in an imaginary fantasy land in which austerity and Brexit and the waste, corruption of the pandemic have somehow not had an impact on our economy. Perhaps they believe that the same magic money tree they believe is in Walpole Park is the same magic money tree that Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng believed was in the number 10 garden. Because the reality is, as they well know, but are afraid to tell the people of Ealing, that the decisions taken in number 10, of course, have an impact right here in this borough. If you crash the economy and you send interest rates sky high, then of course the public sector will be able to do less because they have less money. And we know what the consequence is. Jeremy Hunt pulling together an emergency budget that will slash tens of billions of pounds from our economy. And he is looking to the people of Ealing and to Acton and to Hanwell and to Perivale and to Northolt and from Greenford and from Southall. And he's looking to those residents and he's asking them to pay for their mistakes. The decisions taken in number 10 have a clear blue line to the impacts and the consequences that are being faced by our residents. And it's a matter of priority. So whilst the government believe that it's the priority to slash taxes for the wealthiest few, we in this borough are using the spare cash that we have left to support charities to open their buildings this winter, to enable pensioners to shelter somewhere warm. Let that sink in. It's about priorities. It's about the priorities that we set out as an administration and as a Labour Party that say that power and wealth and opportunity should be in the hands of the many and not the few. And a Tory party that will cling to power with its last gasp and its last breath. A new Prime Minister, the second to have received a fixed penalty notice, shifting the mirage of stability whilst in reality, their party is in chaos, divided, weak, indecisive, trashing our economy. The people of this borough need a Labour government. The people of this borough consistently vote for a Labour council. It's about time that the people of Ealing were given their chance to reject the Tories once and for all. Ladies and gentlemen, we need a general election and we need it now.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you. The next is the Speaker, the Councillor Steve. 3 minutes only for the coming all the councillors, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. The motion which Councillor Mason has moved so powerfully is against the backdrop of this morning. The Chair of London Council's, Georgia Gould, described the situation faced by the 32 boroughs as beyond bleak. Estimated deficit across London of £400 million in the current financial year, £700 million in the next financial year. Well, London deserves better. We all deserve better. And all of this is in the context of the carnage referred to in our motion, the Truss catastrophe outlined
by Councillor Mason, and the situation we face now, in which the revolving cast of squalid characters that constitute the Conservative government of this decade has been reconstituted. The future is not Robert Jenrick. It's not Oliver Dowden. It's certainly not Suella Braverman after her 6-day exile and in return to immediate further disgrace. These people were failures under Boris Johnson, failures under Liz Truss, failures, many of them, under Theresa May or even David Cameron. And I'm going to do something now, which I've never done in a motion before. I'm going to ask the Conservative Party, for the sake of their own dignity and self-respect, not to move their amendment. Because if you read their amendment, it seeks to remove from the motion all reference, not only to the Truss government, but to all Conservative government action of the recent period. Well, I tell you, you can't push me in a pond and tell me it's raining. It's not. In fact, it's just absurd to pretend that this is not about government action. We have some rather curious statistics around the relative success of the British economy. Well, I've got here, I've referred to a document in the House of Commons Library by Daniel Harari, GDP International Comparisons. It's got a nice chart here. It's got the USA at one end with a nice strong positive. This is real change compared with pre-pandemic level to Q2 2022. There's only one country with a negative bar chart here, and that, you may be amazed to hear, is the United Kingdom. So we've been failed at a national level, and we can't afford, literally or metaphorically, to be failed any longer. The country deserves better. We deserve an election now.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Councillor Steed, please.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I note that this morning it was revealed that the publishers of Collins Dictionary have published the words of the year, and top of the list is permacrisis. How fitting that tonight we should be discussing the state of the nation in this motion. My group find little to disagree with in the motion put forward by the majority party, especially the call for a general election. However, it is a shame that the Labour group could not make the appeal of the motion perhaps slightly more encompassing. There was no need for the fluff about Labour Ealing being open, honest and transparent. Labour has seldom been open and transparent, as it happens. It is also surely hoping against all past experience for Labour Ealing to be creative. Not only for the obvious reason that the words Ealing, Labour and creative are not exactly synonymous, but for the more important reason that with the Conservative government funding of local government, it is genuinely a challenge to see how local authorities of any political persuasion can support families through the Conservative cost of living crisis. And we are talking of a Labour Party who nicked the Lib Dem policy of a windfall tax, and a Labour Party who do not dare mention the word Brexit, except in the context of making Brexit work. Have Labour truly not gathered by now that Brexit does not work? The Conservative amendment, which is to support the comments of Councillor Donnelly, it's an absurd amendment, and it just underlines the lack of ideas of a tired party and the inability to face the fact that they are incompetent. And again, surely the Conservative Party should have learned by now that trickle-down economics does not work. I move our amendment, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor House, please.
Yeah, thank you. I formally second the amendment from Councillor Seat, and I reserve my right to speak later.
Take it now.
I'm on the list. Okay, fine, I can take it now. Absolutely. I will be very brief and short. While no government, national or local, is without fault, ours included, the current UK government is definitely has brought embarrassment and ridicule to the whole nation. From morally questionable, at least, to economically incompetent, this has harmed the country's reputation in the world. Reading German coverage on the recent upheaval, it seems that Germans freely use English swear words without the beeps to describe the current situation in the UK. This damage is not undone by another undemocratic Tory internal vote. Only a general election would go somewhat to restoring our reputation. The consequences of such reckless government is very concrete and immediately harmful to people's livelihood in this community. Increasing interest rates will erode many hopes for an own home. Inflation will bring food poverty to many. Local governments bearing the brunt of budget cuts for far too long. The government of the day has to own up and repair the damage on a council level. Is it time for the British people to ask, I am the people, get me out of here?
Thank you. Councillor County, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As the new Prime Minister said on the steps of Downing Street last week, mistakes were made in the effort to try and drive and improve economic growth. I think there's great regret about the impact that that's caused on families, not just in Ealing, but across the country. But the origins of the global cost of living and economic emergency are rooted in the impacts of the COVID pandemic and the ground and economic war being waged by Moscow. It is for those reasons that the impacts are also being felt across the globe. That is why we see average Eurozone inflation higher in the UK, and in Germany, for example, standing at 10.4%. The impact of this emergency can be seen in the IMF data published just a few weeks ago that forecasts GDP growth this year will be higher in the UK than in Germany, France, Italy, and the US, and that our government debt as a percentage of GDP is lower than in Germany, the United States, or in Canada. Now, the last 2.5 years have been a period of great uncertainty, caused in part by the pandemic and now the global economic crisis, which has caused fears for families across the country. Now, the government has sought to support working people over that period, firstly during the pandemic, with £400 billion spent to support individuals and businesses, a total that's virtually more than any other country, supporting 14.5 million jobs and £80 billion being spent to support business. These are enormous sums spent to support people in their real lives to protect millions of jobs. As Putin's war has pushed up global energy and food prices, the government has taken direct action to try and tackle the cost of living pressures, delivering an energy price guarantee, which will give people certainty on their energy price over the winter months. It's delivering a total package of an additional £37 billion of cost of living support, supporting people through the months ahead, with a £400 energy bill support scheme for households, with more vulnerable households receiving up to £1,200 in support. Now, the country and the economy moving forward need stability, something that both the new Prime Minister and the Chancellor are looking to provide. In 2019, the Conservative Party was given a mandate to govern, and a general election at this time would destabilise our economy that needs certainty moving forward. And Labour called for a general election, but what are Labour's plan for an economy other than few sound bites on what the actual policies they're looking to deliver? What spending would they reduce? What taxes would they increase? Income tax, national insurance, VAT? Their election campaign usually hinges on billions of unfunded spending commitments, but we know now the markets won't tolerate this. So what's their alternative vision? As the Lib Dems, it's interesting that they talk about the cost of living, because their energy policy paper from a few months ago that's still on their website calls for new taxes on household heating, which they admit in there will increase the price of gas and oil for heating. So rather than tackling the cost of living, will increase the cost of families and households, not just in Ealing, but across the country. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gallagher, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you. I want to support our second hour amendment. And if I may, I'll just speak briefly, as Councillor Hirsch did. Get the main speeches. All right. Thank you very much. Reserve my right to speak later. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Next is Councillor Leader, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I am pleased to speak in favour of this motion, and I'm grateful to have the opportunity to address the Chamber following my election as a new councillor for Pitsanger. It is a privilege to represent such a diverse ward and to speak on their behalf in this Chamber. I was born at the Ealing Hospital Maternity Unit on the dawn of a historic landslide electoral victory that brought a three-term Labour government to power. A Labour government that transformed the landscape of the country, from the Northern Ireland peace talks to leadership during the international banking crisis. Supporting ordinary taxpayers through the stormy markets, unlike the recent fiscal turmoil that was created in Number 10, which saw the economy being trashed by the Prime Minister and her short-lived Chancellor that spooked the markets. Halloween came far too early this year, some would say. Whilst I, along with my fellow colleagues, Councillor Buckley and Wesson, witnessed residents living in parts of our Pitsanger ward having to choose between eating or heating their homes. Councils like ours have been punished for supporting local people through one of the most devastating periods in our modern history, yet they couldn't care less about our financial situation and cuts to services. The Tories have just anointed their third leader in as many months and denied us a democratic vote. They are completely clueless on the havoc they have caused to lives of people and local businesses that are the lifeblood of our thriving communities. I am proud to support the work of local businesses, such as those in Pitsanger Village, from a former classmate who now runs the local florist shop to the pizza and kebab businesses, which have been there longer than I can remember. This is what makes our community tick. And it is a privilege to be back in this town hall after 18 years, following my first undertaking at age 8, organising a fundraising concert for children affected by the 2004 tsunami. Ealing has always offered ample opportunities for the younger generation, and I was fortunate enough to make use of the excellent music provisions from Ealing Junior Music School to Ealing Youth Orchestra. Having attended the local schools during my formative years, and having received support from many different local groups and communities who shaped who I am today, I couldn't be prouder to be standing here. I'm also proud to be part of a Labour group which celebrates diversity and to be among so many strong women councillors. Here at Ealing Labour, we stand united against the cuts that many fear will follow the catastrophic failures of the government's recent decisions. They may change their leader and rearrange the decks of the Titanic, but people up and down Ealing will not be forgiving. But Madam Mayor, it is not all doom and gloom. Look at the bright side. We stand ready to take on the reins of power for the many and not the few. The people of Ealing deserve better, and better they will get with a new Labour government under Keir Starmer who will deliver on people's priorities. We owe this to the people of Ealing, and I, for one, together with the rest of my colleagues in this chamber, will be working day and night to make this a reality, to tackle the scourge of the Tory-induced cost of living crisis and economic emergency. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Councillor Harsh, please. No? Okay. Councillor Jessel, please. Surinder Jessel.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My name is Councillor Surinder Kaur Jassel, and I'm honoured to represent South West Ward. It is the greatest honour and privilege of my life to have been elected in South West Ward, my hometown. Firstly, I would like to take this opportunity to thank our leader of Ealing Council, Peter Mason, for believing in me to represent a brand new ward, and to the residents of South West who voted for me to be their councillor. I would also like to take this opportunity to pay a tribute to our late Queen, Queen Elizabeth II, our longest serving and great monarch. We will honour the late Queen's memory by keeping the values of public service she embodied. May she rest in peace. Her life of public service, in a way, reminds me of my parents who originated from India and settled in Southall in 1964. They taught me the art of seva. Seva is a Sikh Punjabi word for voluntary service to help the vulnerable or the disadvantaged. And it is this spirit that has brought me here today and is why I am speaking to you all from the council chamber. Ealing is now an open, transparent and inclusive council. I am proud to be part of a council that is building genuinely affordable homes, creating good jobs, tackling the climate crisis, and ensuring that the community are part of this journey every step of the way. Southall is a rich, vibrant, multicultural area where many religions, faiths, and communities reside together. However, Southall has been poverty-stricken for a very long time, as we who reside here know this well. Still recovering from the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, we are faced with the cost of living crisis and the government's chaotic mismanagement of the economy that has hit ordinary people hard. Due to the government's incompetence, families are seriously struggling to make ends meet. Do they put food on the table? Or do they pay their gas, electric, or water bill? In Ealing, we are sending the government a simple message. Don't take it out on us. I'm looking forward to the delivery of the Southall Reset, which aims to build an inclusive economy in Southall, and the delivery of the local plan, which will build an even better Ealing for residents. But it's clear that only a Labour government will put things right across our communities. The Tories are out of credibility and out of prime ministers. It's time for change. Madam Mayor, I support this motion.
Thank you, Surendra. Thank you. Well done. Councillor Gallant, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've just listened to Councillor Mason's very sincere speech, but I just wondered if he actually lives in the world. Does he actually live? Does he look outside the UK? Does he see what's happening in the world? I'm also very pleased to disobey Councillor Donnelly's recommendation to not move our motion. I'm very happy to second it. The economic stresses of our times did not originate in the UK. They affect the whole world, as they well know. The Conservative government responded fully to the pandemic, rolling out the vaccination programme ahead of every other developed nation. Furlough scheme, offering grants, not so much the amounts of the grants, but the ease of access, which was very important. Now there's the energy bill support scheme, £37 billion, as Councillor Conti says, in other support. The war in Ukraine, the UK was the first to support Ukraine, and I'm proud of that, and I'm also proud that we provided homes for Ukrainians, this scheme that's been rolled out over the country, to helping families to take in Ukrainians. So, in spite of this, the GDP growth rate in the UK is higher than the European average. Our inflation rate is lower than the European average. And more to the point, and this goes back to the motion earlier on, the government has acknowledged and said, we understand that the proposals in the mini budget in September were not timely, that mistakes were made. And we acknowledge that. We've acted to correct them with a new Prime Minister and cabinet swiftly installed who are not frightened of taking the measures necessary, and that may include raising taxes in order to meet it. And we've been very frank about that. So in fact, it's quite clear that a motion that's put forward, such a motion as tonight's put forward, is a mistake because it's out of date by the time it's being discussed. It's out of date. Now, what we certainly agree that the government needs to provide extra support for councils struggling with the effect of inflation and the possible impact of a recession, because local authorities have a unique perspective on day-to-day life, and they can best channel help where it's needed. In fact, we go further and urge further support in the area of immigration. We mentioned this before, as local authorities are having to use their scarce resources to support asylum seekers in hostels. And I know this for a fact, because I know many early start workers who are having to go into the hotels where asylum seekers are being housed to look after them. And this is stretching the resources. So I would urge members to support our amendment because it makes good sense and it's much tighter than the waffle that's coming out of the leadership.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Iqbal, please.
Madam Mayor, it's a huge honor and privilege to rise to make my first speech in a full council. Yeah, it's okay? Yeah. Today is the proudest day of my life. Greenford is my home. It is where I lived for my many years, and it is where my children grow up. As I find my feet as a counselor, it has been an incredible learning experience. My special thanks to my colleagues, in particular to our leader of the council, Councillor Peter Mason, and Councillor Deirdre Costigan, for helping me throughout my political journey today. Madam Mayor, my sincere thanks also to my families, who I am blessed with. To the members of the Greenford North Ward of the Labour Party, to my friends and co-councillors who supported me on this unique journey of mine. I see my role now as the councillor for Greenford North Ward, as the spokesperson for my community. I will be available and I will listen. My community are my eyes and ears, and together we can deliver on outcomes to constantly keep building on our great ward. With the new government, we are going through this period of uncertainty, which is going to affect my residents, many residents in my ward. We face an economic crisis, which is a Tory crisis made in Downing Street, and the Tory government has responded by announcing pro-rich and pro-corporate policies. Families are struggling to put dinner on the table as the food bank use continue to rise. New research from the Food Foundation show more and more families are struggling to pay for food through the cost of living crisis. Against this backdrop, Ealing Council has continued to invest in services, grow the ward, and deliver the priorities residents tell us are important to them. I therefore look forward the next 4 years to work together and by looking forwards, not back, to help deliver for our wards and delivering for the residents. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Stafford, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Before I continue with my speech, I just want to thank and congratulate the maiden speakers, Councillor Jassel, Councillor Iqbal and Councillor Nijjar. I'm also particularly pleased that Councillor Nijjar is here and has restored the balance of 2 old priorians to this chamber, people who went to St Benedict School and also former alumni of Ealing Youth Orchestra. I was interested actually in Councillor Nijjar because she said she was born at the cusp of when Tony Blair was elected, and so she might have been a little too young to remember, but at the end of that period, there was a transition, let's call it, between Labour leaders, and there wasn't a general election then, so there really shouldn't need to be one now. But with this, if we thought, and I actually did think, I did think that last motion, we'd heard the most amount of whining that it was somebody else's fault what's going on. This Labour motion is the biggest whinge fest. How about taking some responsibility for the actions that goes on in this borough, rather than trying to blame every single other person rather than themselves? But because Labour does want to talk about the national issue, I think it's only fair that we do talk about some of the great support that the Conservative government over the last few months, over the last year, have put in place. There's £37 billion of extra spending to give support to the people in need. £650 cost of living payment for every household on benefits, £300 pensioner cost of living payment for every pensioner, £150 disability cost living payment for those people receiving that benefit, boosting the housing support fund to £1.5 billion for local authorities, delivering a £150 council tax. The list goes on and on. So it is totally disingenuous to say that the government is not doing its best to support people who are feeling the pinch. Councillor Gallant and Councillor Conti are right. We cannot look at this in isolation. The reality is we are facing unprecedented world events, including the war in Ukraine and including the pandemic. And maybe I was in a different council chamber, but I remember members on the opposite benches telling us how much more we needed to give, how much more taxpayers' money we should be spending on the pandemic, how much more lockdown we should have. And had the government done that, we would have been in an even worse situation financially than we are now. Choices had to be made, and I think the government gave the right choices, but there is inevitably a cost that comes with that. And we, now we are outside that pandemic, are having to pay the price, and we will have to pay that price. And in fact, probably our children will have to pay the price for that pandemic to get through that pandemic. And I will also take no lectures about changing a prime minister from a group of people who not once but twice stood on the streets of Ealing trying to get Jeremy Corbyn to be our prime minister. We don't take any lectures in competence from people who thought that man should be running the country. Ladies and gentlemen, Madam Mayor, I support our amendments.
Thank you very much. Councillor Coley, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I am truly honoured to be elected as a Labour councillor from Central Greenford. This is where I live with my family. I am grateful to the residents for choosing me to represent them, and I will serve with integrity and dedication. I would like to pay tribute to my predecessors, Anthony Kelly and Simon Woodruff, for all their hard work in this ward. I would also like to say a big thank you to my family for their moral support and help during my campaign. I am proud to be part of the largest Labour group Ealing has ever had, where more than 50% of the councillors are women. And our councillors are a true representation of the diversity we have in this borough. However, we face major challenges. The cost of living crisis is unprecedented in our modern history. Many people are unable to sleep at night because they do not know how they will pay their mortgages, their energy bills, and their food costs. It is the Tory government and their policies over the last 12 years which have brought this crisis upon us. I was horrified by the best advice Boris Johnson offered to help us during this cost of crisis. His advice was to buy a new kettle. He said it would save you £10. Madam Mayor, then we had Liz Truss. Under her prime ministership, the pound plummeted to the lowest level ever recorded. Interest rates shot up. The financial world lost confidence in our economy, and inflation entered double figures. Madam Mayor, now we have Rishi Sunak. We don't know what public services he plans to cut, but we have one clear message for Mr. Sunak. Don't take the government's mistakes out on councils like Ealing. Since we were elected in May, we have ensured all home care workers in Ealing will be paid the London living wage. I'm also proud that our council has one of the most generous council tax support schemes in the country. And we are using all our resources to help the residents keep warm this winter. In spite of the Tory cuts to our budget, Ealing Council is working hard to help residents during the current crisis and has a plan to make Ealing even better. So I support this motion. Thank you for listening to me.
Councillor Mahfouz, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and follow that, as they say. Congratulations to all of the excellent maiden speeches we've heard this evening. It's been said by a number of people that people live in different worlds, in bubbles, in their own little bubbles, and we all sadly know all too well from the tear-filled phone calls that we get, the gut-wrenchingly painful to read emails that sit in our inboxes, and the heartbreaking stories from those attending our surgeries, all the real victims of those facing the Conservative cost of living crisis, looking for help from their Labour council. But there is a bubble where this doesn't exist, I can tell you, where everything is sunny and rosy. That bubble is the Tory Westminster bubble. Let me tell you about that bubble. Well, a bubble where only last week, Shell were able to announce their profits more than doubled between July and September, reaching $9.5 billion in just 3 months. BP similarly seen profits of £10 billion, with the same company's boss complaining that it was getting more cash than it knew what to do with. Next year, it's predicted their profits will more than double, over £40 billion. But it's not just the oil giants, bankers' bonuses are booming too. They are higher than any time since the 2008 financial crisis. In fact, posh bars in the city have even cried they've run out of their most expensive champagne. All whilst the vast majority are struggling like never before, the wealthy few are absolutely raking it. But it's okay, because whilst the rich are offered tax cuts, genuinely eye-watering inflation is hitting Ealing residents hard. We talked about who's living on another planet, and we've heard the lie from the other side where it was claimed that the UK's had relatively low global inflation. Well, look, we've just done a bit of a game on this side. Let's all take part. I've just been on the Financial Times website. On their international inflation tracker. So let's see how the UK is doing globally, shall we? So compared to the UK, how is Mexico doing? Is it higher or lower? Lower. Lower, correct, well done. Let's go to the Ivory Coast, the Côte d'Ivoire. Higher or lower than the UK? Lower. Lower, correct, well done, 10 points. Next up is Ecuador. Higher or lower, folks? Lower. Lower, well done. And now let's go to the Palestinian territory. Is it higher or lower than the UK? No. It's lower again, well done. So that puts to a lie to the fact that this is a global problem, but the UK is suffering far worse, and the residents of Ealing are suffering far worse than most people in the rest of the world. And now, Madam Mayor, the Tories have the absolute audacity to tout that everybody's taxes should be going up to pay for the fine mess that they've created, when it is those who are hardest hit are the working poor. Their choices are why millions of people across this country are absolutely struggling, whilst the super rich are offered tax cuts. In the words of our infamous Prime Minister, that is a disgrace. Madam Mayor, we must burst that Tory Westminster bubble and deliver a Labour government, which will deliver a government for the people, by the people. Madam Mayor, a general election now.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. Councillors, it is 9:30 p.m. now, which means I need to ask whether you would like to extend the meeting to 10 p.m. What's going on? Oh. Councillor Kumar. Councillor Kumar, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There is no doubt that we are living in challenging times, affecting all of us in one way or another. My heart goes out to those affected, particularly the elderly and children, and I will continue to help my community as I have always done. The situation, as we know, has been caused by a combination of the pandemic and the economic effects of the Ukrainian war. So all I want to say is that, you keep asking for a general election. We obviously no. Yeah, you've been asking, but we have a new prime minister committed. Well, there you'll have to see. We will have to wait and find out. But no, on the serious side, we have a new prime minister with extraordinary commitment and energy, and we are right behind that. So work, as he said, has already begun. So
Thank you, Kumar. Thank you. Councillor Young, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I noticed that Councillor Mahfouz had to go an awful long way to seek his comparisons. If you seek a closer comparison with Europe, we find that we're not doing so badly. Our growth rate is greater than the European Union as a whole, and our inflation rate is lower than the European Union as a whole. We're not living in Holland, where the inflation rate is 17%. We're not living in Estonia, where the inflation rate is 24%. We're not doing so badly in the face of the economic crisis, which I would remind you has been caused by the COVID epidemic. And now I'm not going to say Gordon Brown. And the quantitative easing that was necessary to counteract the massive reduction in money supply that the COVID pandemic caused. QE has got to be paid for, and that caused a rise in inflation, which is made worse by the supply side difficulties caused by the recovery from COVID and by the Ukrainian war. But we're doing better than Europe as a whole. We're doing quite well, really. It's a difficult situation in comparison. The one thing I note in this debate is that there's been no suggestion from the Labour Party as to where their funding is coming from. They're very happy in their motion to propose expenditure left, right and centre. But if they raise the taxes, then that's going to make the recession worse. Where's the money going to come from when you don't have as much growth as you have at the present time? As always, it's a high tax economy with the Labour Party, no growth.
How can it be worse?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I beg to
Thank you. Thank
seek
you.
to approve our amendment.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Councillor Brett, please.
Madam Mayor, considering everything that's occurred in recent weeks, I wanted to remind us all of the harsh reality we were in some short time ago. The Tories have been in power for 12 long years. That period has meant grueling austerity measures. Local councils like ours have seen massive 15 billion real terms reduction to funding. That has had huge repercussions on how the council can support its residents. This government has decimated local NHS and mental health services. Education is in crisis and youth services have been cut to the bone. This list of government failings for Ealing residents can go on and on. There is the direct link. So this was the reality all but 6 or 7 weeks ago. Depressing, isn't it? But if that wasn't depressing enough, we then endured the utter chaos brought to us by Liz Truss and the now notorious mini budget. Chaos in which it saw this so-called government crash our economy. I say so-called because let's face it, there hasn't been much in the way of governing. A total farce. The shortest serving Prime Minister in history, Liz Truss, presided over a mini budget which saw the pound and the gilt markets crash spectacularly. Interest rates have skyrocketed, which in turn has pushed mortgages to unaffordable and unsustainable levels. All of this time, while energy bills are surging to record highs and inflation is spiraling out of control. Our community in Ealing is being pounded from every angle by this government. Every single one of us in this room, every one of our residents has been affected in some way, and unfortunately, this is only the beginning. And now we have Sunak and Hunt at the helm, God help us, drip feeding us messages, about making the right decisions for fiscal stability. The irony hasn't been lost on me, and it won't be lost on many of us in here tonight. This government has demonstrated the absolute opposite of that, shoring up their positions and putting their careers before the people of this country and the residents of Ealing. So we call on this government to have a long, hard think about the hardship they brought to ordinary people and do the right thing. I am supporting this motion tonight, and I really hope to God this government is listening. This is beyond a cost of living crisis. This is a catastrophe. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Corty, please.
Madam Mayor, the last 2 months have been a nightmare for everyone. Economy trashed, pound and pensions collapsing, and prices going through the roof. It is a crisis made in number 10. 12 years of Tory government, from Cameron to Truss, have brought the country to its knees. Madam Mayor, I'm sure our local members, Tory members, would agree with me. We all agree tough decisions will have to be made, but the price of cleaning up this mess must not fall on the poor, the pensioners, and those on low incomes and benefits. There should be no cuts to public services and local councils. It is bad enough to struggle with rising prices and energy bills. After 12 years of austerity, people cannot go through the pain of austerity once again. Local councils cannot cope with the more cuts. We still have to keep the streets lights on, empty rubbish bins every week, mend our roads, run our schools, run our social care and children's homes. Madam Mayor, this is why it is right to declare a cost of living and economic emergency. This is why we should say no cuts to local council budgets, no cuts to pensions and benefits. We should also say changing the Prime Minister from Cameron to May, from May to Johnson, from Johnson to Truss, and now from Truss to Sunak is no solution. Because each one of them has pulled the country down to deeper and deeper depths of disaster. So what do we need to do now? We need a general election. We should go to the people of the country so that they can choose a government that can restore trust in our economy and our country. And I support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Councillor Harshni, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And as colleagues have touched upon today, the cost of food is rising across the board. And actually, in a conversation I had with Jeremy Hyde, the new manager at the Ealing Food Bank this week, he told me the startling figures that since last October, they've seen a 50% rise of clients coming through the door. The other main contributor to the cost of living crisis, and the one I'll focus on this evening, has been the rise in energy costs and the impact this is having on fuel poverty. Stats from the National Energy Action Charity show that 13% of residents in Ealing are already living in fuel poverty in 2021. And last year, sadly, this led to 30 excess winter deaths. But the situation will no doubt be exacerbated this year, given that bills have rocketed by 64%. And this is no doubt to both internal and external pressures, including, of course, Russia's illegal invasion in Ukraine. But by next year, the End Fuel Poverty Coalition is estimated this is going to have a direct impact and will lead to a 50% increase in fuel poor households in the UK. And as the Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves pointed out today, on top of this, many are now being forced onto prepayment meters, which will disconnect if they're not topped up. So people could actually be in a situation where they're living with no electricity whatsoever. And as we're all too aware, I'm sure, when we're speaking to our local residents, those on lower incomes, and actually especially the most vulnerable with living with disabilities, face the hardest hits, because it's actually the poorest 10% who are spending the most on food and energy. Now, whilst all of that has happened, I understand, I know Conservative colleagues here are talking about that we're not facing the fact. Actually, despite the cuts that we've had to local funding, we are trying to do what we can. Only this week, we announced a cost of living hub online, and we're urging residents to go and see what is available, because there are things available at local level. But Madam Mayor, we can't run away from the fact that our residents are being left behind by a Tory government in Westminster that has totally lost grip of the situation. And as Councillor Mahfouz said, last week it was announced that oil giant Shell reported profits of £9.5 billion compared to 4 billion last year. And today, actually, BP was announced to have made profits of £7 billion. And that's off the back of working people in this country. The Tory government has refused to extend the windfall tax, and I really hope that the autumn statement is something we can look forward to, and that is extended properly. Well, we'll wait and see. But the rise of energy costs is not new, but every indication that we're seeing is of a Tory government with a short-sighted view of tackling the underlying issues. So what we're seeing is a cycle leaving people vulnerable to energy price fluctuations and at the behest of an annual cost of living crisis, not just this year, next year, and the year after, and the year after that.
Thank you.
So the alternative is clear, Madam Mayor. Let's have a general election so the people can decide. Thank you.
Councillor Alexander.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Last week, I attended the Southall Community Alliance during London Challenge Poverty Week, where I spoke about poverty, discrimination, and dignity. The cost of living crisis will affect us all, however, some more than others. The feeling of having less than others can often lead to shame due to the discrimination faced by others, then ultimately affect your dignity. Shame can be described as silencing your soul. People should not feel a sense of shame due to having less than others in our beloved borough. This leads to some residents feeling unable to partake in regular activities that some take for granted. However, some may see it as a privilege. Madam Mayor, I would like to speak directly to those residents by a Caribbean quote. When you're on one of the Caribbean islands, sometimes it's hard to picture how they fit in with the rest. But when you see them all joined together like a necklace from space, you see the natural geographic connectedness of them all. This could also be said about our 7 beloved towns. Members in times of adversity, Ealing rally together and support one another. I would also like to quote an African proverb. If you think you're too small to make a difference, you haven't spent the night with a mosquito. No gesture or act of kindness is too small for our beloved residents and communities. Give when you can, whether it's your time in terms of volunteering, perhaps donating to the food bank, building on the success of Ealing Together. You could also become a community champion. Madam Mayor, whilst the current Conservative government continue to destroy our economy, unfortunately, they remain in denial and refuse the good people of Ealing a general election. However, I have hope that whilst in this nightmare continues, the dreams of many residents are coming to fruition in our beloved borough. The Windrush and Abolition Slavery unveiling plaques, I saw action, not words, from our leaders, officers and members, which was the theme of the Black History Month. However, Madam Mayor, the actions of few the following day made me really angry. There needs to be a consensus in this chamber to ensure that despite political lines, we consider our actions and responsibility to each other and the majority of our residents. I believe there will be times that it's necessary to have invite-only forums to safeguard the most vulnerable residents. I worry that scenes such as Southall Alliance Community Alliance the other day will put vulnerable residents from engaging when they need us the most due to the terrible cost of living crisis caused by our current government's self-interest. When we must remember all residents, not only residents that are vocal and attend meetings, We must be mindful of the residents that may have taken extreme courage to attend such an event and wanted to hear from senior members. Those residents deserve a calm, welcoming and constructive space. Those vulnerable residents could be deciding on what to eat, whether to put their heating on. Without the necessary support, could be at risk of death during this very long winter. As such, we all have a responsibility to ensure the most vulnerable in our borough feel safe to reach out and get support when necessary.
Time.
Residents, right, just quickly, I wish I could teleport everyone to the next general election. Unfortunately, I can't. Just know that Ealing Labour are on your side and I support this motion.
Thank you. Councillor Manno, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think sometimes it's important we look at the local issues in terms of what actually it means. We say inflation at 10% in terms of the cost of living crisis. But when you dig down deeper and actually look at where those price increases are going, it is affecting the lowest paid in our community. So vegetable oil that many communities used to cook increased by 65%. Pasta, the cheapest food, increased by 60%. Tea increased by 46%. Chips, many people eat chips, 39% increase. Bread that people buy every day, 37% increase. Milk that people use to feed babies and make tea, 29% increase in the prices. Yes, I know you can say inflation at 10%, but the reality is our residents are facing that inflation rate because they need to spend the less money they get on basic foodstuffs. Energy costs, you say you protected people. Energy costs have doubled for our most vulnerable residents from about £1,100 a year to £2,500. And then you've only guaranteed it now for 6 months, not for 2 years, as you were boasting. And Liz Truss was boasting that Labour was saying 6 months. And she was saying we were going to do it for 2 years. What did you do? You came back to 6 months. So what's going to happen in 6 months' time? All those residents will be suffering. Mortgage rates gone up from 2% to 5.99% for 2 years, or 5.69. I personally have been affected. My mortgage rate's gone up by £600 a month. That's wiped out any sort of relief you may have done on energy prices. Many residents are facing that day in, day out. And I think I know the Conservatives, Tories are trying to undermine, lie it down and not accept. But we are facing a massive cost of living crisis, and we need to have a general election. You are tired, you're out of ideas, you don't know what to do next. Please release the people of this country, let the Labour government come in and change our fortunes. We need a general election because you're out of ideas and you're out of time. Thank you.
Councillor Raja, please.
So when Sunak arrived in Downing Street last week, he said he faced a moment of economic crisis. He then did his best to suggest that this was all the fault of Liz Truss and that it was his job to correct her mistakes. If only things were that easy. There's no doubt that the policies Truss tried to deliver and the way in which she sought to deliver them were crass. But the crisis we are in is much deeper than that. We face trouble on multiple fronts, as we've heard from many of the colleagues today. COVID, despite the official pretense that it's gone away, is still crippling the NHS with many more cases than ever, and is reducing the size of the UK workforce and its productivity dramatically. Action on the climate change is not happening. And in the middle of all of that, the inflation is on a scale that we've not seen for 40 years. At the same time, public services are in meltdown, and strikes are becoming increasingly common as people are desperate to make ends meet, to reach the ends of their tether and take industrial action. All of this will get worse if the government lets the Bank of England increase interest rates, Already with the base rates at 2.25% for mortgage rates are running well over 5% and are steadily rising. If the Bank of England base rates get to 5%, as is expected even after Sunak's arrival, mortgage rates for 2 million or more households who have to renew their deals in the next year could exceed 7%, with additional costs coming up to, as we've heard, more than £500 a month. Very few will have the capacity to pay for anything like that. Those rates will also spill over into rental markets, where the crisis arising from an inability to pay will be felt first. And the high interest rates will also impact the small businesses, in particular, very heavily and in two ways. Firstly, their borrowing costs go up. And secondly, the households unable to pay their basic bills don't go out and they don't spend. They don't spend on anything but essentials in life. This hits the sector with high unemployment rates like hospitality, leisure, and retail, which is hit especially hard. And unemployment could increase rapidly if interest rates continue to rise and businesses fail as a result. Sunak faces something worse than crisis then. What he faces is an avoidable recession, as he continues to favour the rich over the rest of us. What we have is a government so removed from their problems and problems of their own creation. This is now time for a change. We must have a general election. The people of Ealing, London, and Britain deserve better. We deserve a country where aspiration is rewarded, where clean energy is a priority, and where working people get their rights, respect, and security that they deserve. And that is a Labour choice. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you. Councillor Street, please sum up.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Firstly, congratulations to all the councillors who made speeches this evening. We began listening to Councillor Conti, and Councillor Conti was initially seemed quite contrite as to the actions of the various Conservative governments. But as we've gone through the evening, various Conservative councillors seem to have forgotten all about contrition, actually, and seem to just sort of keep peddling, hoping that the horrors that their government have implemented will go away. I honestly don't think they actually get it. And they're not really aware of the problems that their government have caused. Councillor Young perhaps summed it up with his comment, we are doing quite well, really. Well, I think Councillor Young in Ealing Broadway may well hear that quote on a Liberal Democrat yellow leaflet sometime soon. I urge members to vote for our amendment. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Conti, please sum up.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First, I just want to congratulate Councillor Nahar, Jassal, Iqbal, and Cody for their making speeches and the passion which they spoke this evening. In terms of I don't think, I know Councillor Mathous and Councillor Manrose sort of painted that we're we don't understand the issue and or don't realise that there is an issue, and I think we do. I think no one is saying that I think Councillor Mathous used the word rosy. I don't think anyone is pretending that the situation is rosy at all. And we understand that there is a problem, but what we've been saying this evening is that it goes beyond just the decisions that have been made in Number 10 in recent weeks, but the global situation in regards to energy and the war in Ukraine and the impacts and the amount of money that was borrowed during the COVID pandemic has had an impact on that. I think Councillor Cordier, you mentioned obviously about that the way forward shouldn't be on the back of the most vulnerable in society. I completely agree with that. And I know that on the steps of Number 10, I think Rishi Sunak spoke about ensuring that there's a compassionate approach moving forward. And I hope that is something that we will see when they have the autumn statement in a few weeks' time. And I know, as Councillor Stafford outlined, there's a number of things that packages that the government have announced in recent months to try and support people through the cost of living crisis. One of the biggest costs is the cost of energy. And I know, Councillor Raza, you mentioned that nothing's being done on climate change. Well, the UK is one of the leaders in decarbonising our energy supply. It's a leader in the G7. It's in the top 7 out of the 100 countries that are listed in the World Economic Forum at the rate at which we're decarbonising. So stuff is being done to try and move away from relying on fossil fuels, often from authoritarian regimes who then hold us hostage and use that, as Putin has been doing, as waged his economic war across the world. And in terms of something else I heard this evening was, so I can't actually remember who mentioned it now, but talked about the undemocratic process in terms of electing a different prime minister during a term. Well, that is the way that the British Constitution works. It's the way that, you know, in 2007, I think it was, that Gordon Brown took over from Tony Blair. And when in 2008 there was the credit crunch and the Labour Party moved away from the 2005 election manifesto to deal with the challenges at that time, was there a call for a general election from you guys at that time there? I'm not sure in 2008, Councillor Crawford, you were calling for a general election, were you? And just the final thing is, I can't remember exactly who mentioned this, but someone's mentioned that we don't care. And I think, you know, we can disagree with how we tackle the challenges that we face, but the assertion that the Conservatives don't care, and we all know the challenges that we face as councillors and the things that we want to do to improve our communities, I don't think that is accurate. And the other words we've heard this evening are corruption, and the idea that for some reason that people are on the take, I think is wrong. I think we can disagree with how we deal with the challenges and the crises that are ahead of us. But I think that we all in this chamber can agree, and we all care for our communities.
Time is up. Thanks. Councillor Mason, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I hope councillors Kohli, Nijjar, Jassal and Iqbal will forgive me for launching straight into responding to that rather than congratulating on your amazing maiden speeches, and it's so great to have you in the chamber. Councillor Conti, the reason that we say that you don't understand is because you don't understand. Your government is giving, or tried to give, tax cuts to the richest 2,000 people in this country, whilst people in this borough are going to be sheltering in winter shelters this year because they can't afford their bills. Councillor Gallant, you say as if the challenges are not unique to this country. You've had 12 years to deal with our energy independence. If you don't think that inflation is somehow linked to the fact that it was your government that caused Brexit, it's your government that refused to do anything about the supply shortages that we have in this country, that your government has created a hostile environment, both in terms of refugees and migration, that means that there are huge labour shortages in this country, despite the fact that you've now got people, or you're proposing to put refugees in tents, right? And if you don't think that somehow government borrowing at the rates that it is currently at is somehow nothing to do with the waste, corruption and criminality that your government demonstrated during the pandemic, handing out millions and billions in PPE contracts to your own Tory party donors, right? We're not going to be lectured by Councillor Kumar. We're not going to be lectured by Councillor Kumar. We're not going to be lectured by Councillor Kumar on elderly and the children who apparently are going to have to wait and see because Councillor Stafford is happy to say that people who are concerned about the cost of living crisis are somehow whingers, right? I do hope it's on a Liberal Democrat leaflet that goes out on Hanger Hill, because it's going to be on every single Labour Party leaflet that goes out across the borough between now and the general election. Every decision that this government have taken in the last 5 weeks has huge consequences for the residents of this borough. Every decision that will be taken now for the next 5 decades will all come from this moment. Every penny that they try to cut from our budget, every change that they try and foist on our people will be as a consequence of the decisions that they have taken. Councillor Conti, I really feel sorry for you. Trussites to the left, Sunak's to the right, and there you are, stuck in the middle. What we know now, your government didn't listen to the OBR. Not only did they not listen to the OBR, but they totally rejected their advice. The decisions taken by your government are precisely the ones that are going to make this winter difficult, where we have a rise in food banks, where we have warm spaces open, and we have a government planning civil contingencies for blackouts. This is a crisis made by the Tories in number 10. We are on the side of our residents, doing everything that we can to back them up. We are on their side, and we need a general election now.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, we have heard the debate and the motion has been moved. And the second, we will now vote on each amendment and then take the vote on the motion. We will now go to the vote on the Liberal Democrat amendment. All those in favor, please put your hands up. All those who are against? Abstentions, anyone? No. So the amendments falls. And the next is next, we will go now to the vote on the conservative amendments. All those in favor, please put your hands up. All those are against? Abstentions? No. The amendments therefore falls. We will now vote on the motions. All those in favor? All those against? 5. Any abstentions? No. So the motion is therefore carried. Motion is carried. Motion not for debate. Please listen. The motion not be debate for all considered moved, and the second, we are past the guillotines. I will go to the vote on the first motion, not for debate. All those in favor? All those are against? Any abstention? Sorry?
It's just, they were a bit confused, so do those in favor again. Yeah, just start. First motion, all those in favor.
Please, first motion, don't be confused. First motion is all those in favor. All those are against? Or any abstentions? No. The motion is therefore carried. The next. Now for the second motions, not for debate. All those in favor? All those are against? Any abstentions? No, the motion is therefore carried. The third motion not to debate has amendments submitted which has been accepted by the mover and the second. We will now vote on the motion as amended. All those in favor? Good. All those against? No. Any abstentions? No. So the motion is therefore carried. The fourth motion not to be debate has been amended, submitted, which has been accepted by the mover and the second. We will now vote on the motion as amended. All those in favor? All those are against? Any abstention? No. The motion is therefore carried. The fifth motion not be debated had been amended. All those in favor of the amendment? Against? Any abstentions? The amendment is therefore carried. We will now vote on the motion as amended. All those in favor? All those are against? Any abstentions? No. The motion is therefore carried. The sixth motion not we debate has been amended, submitted. All those in favor of the amendment? Those are against? Any abstention? No. The amendment is therefore carried. We will now vote on the motion as amended. All those in favor? Those are against? No. Any abstention? No. The motion is therefore carried. The last item 13. Are the recommendations noted? Appointment to the committee. Are the appointments to the committee agreed?
Madam Mayor, just
Sorry.
on one point, please, there was a minor administrative error earlier, and there is an extension of the planning pool for Labour members, for councillors Summers, Shaw, Rye and Gordon to go onto the planning pool, and also a reserve for the OPDC planning committee for Councillor Manro to be a reserve on that one.
Oh, thank you.
We can second it if it needs second. Ask if it's agreed. Ask if it's not agreed. Ask if that's agreed.
Are you all agreed? Thank you. Are the urgent key decision exempted for calling noted? Noted. The meeting is now closed. Thank you very much for the what can I say? It's a good debate. So I thought hopefully so the improvement will bring the leader. So come with